LifeLock help protect your financial info. So all you have to worry about is what you do with your tax refund. Go to lifelock.com, save up to 25% off your first year. The promo code is HERD, promo code HERD, to save up to 25% off your first year. LifeLock.com. Identity theft protection starts here.
All right. We are back live from the White Claw Hard Seltzer Studios. It's overtime here on Fan Run Radio with myself, Garrett Armbrust, Caleb DeBusk with you for another great show on tap here on this Tuesday afternoon/evening. We appreciate you spending your Tuesday night with us as we get back into Tennessee fall camp today, as the Vols were off yesterday, but back at it again today, and we'll give you the latest fall camp intel with the offensive line. His offensive line coach Glenn Ellerby spoke with the media today. We'll talk about David Sanders' impact, Ori Williams, and some of the other guys on the offensive line to take note of this season. Then we'll get back into some more conversation on the QB battle as we prepare for scrimmages over the next couple weeks within the team on the next couple Saturdays. Obviously, the QB battle will really take hold once we get into those. It's tough to figure out who the QB1 is when you're just doing open routes to players along the sideline with no one really guarding you. So once you get into that with real defenses and, having to go up against different schemes and reading different plays, that's, I think, when you're going to see what quarterback has the higher IQ, what quarterback is going to be, better set for the SEC schedule this season. And then in the second hour, we'll get into some other QB1 battles around the country. Tennessee's not the only team in the nation that has QB battles. Vanderbilt, Florida, Alabama, Arizona State, some other teams that we'll keep an eye on and talk about. And then we'll also get into the On3 Sports Top 25 as Tennessee was ranked number 20 in the On3 Top 25 fall preview before we get into the season. We'll talk about what we saw there, where some of the SEC teams are ranked and some of the teams that Tennessee will be playing this season. But before we get into doing that, let's welcome in Caleb, who's here with us again in the production room as always. Caleb, how are you doing today?
Feeling good. Yeah, got another day of fall camp. Excited to get into it. Seeing a lot of stuff going around. Just that much closer to the season.
No doubt. Every day is one day closer as we're August 11th now. Just the days keep ticking until we get to September 5th for that season opener against Furman in Neyland Stadium. And I basically just count down the days till we get there because as me and Caleb were talking about before the show, there's not much on TV this time of year. Maybe the CFL, some things on the ESPN Ocho, but not too much of football other than the NFL preseason. Which
there's like some inflatable pony flipping.
Okay, they had that. I've seen they were doing something the other day on the Ocho with like roofs of houses. They were like throwing stuff up there, and that was on the Ocho. Just
like some inflatable stair, like soapy stair running, I think is on there.
See, I think the ESPN Ocho used to only do it one time a year, but I feel like they do it way more than one time a year now. But it's that's what you get in the off season is you get a bunch of hoopla and a bunch of nothing. But what we can get into is Tennessee, as they were back on the field today for fall camp after a day off yesterday. And this was the 5th day of fall camp for Tennessee. And the offensive line was something that was talked about heavy at camp today. His videos on social media emerged and circulated, showing the size, too, of David Sanders and LSU transfer Ori Williams. Both players have obviously taken advantage of this Derek Owens strength and conditioning program. Derek Owens coming over from Indiana, a championship strength and conditioning program that we've talked about at length of what he did at Indiana with a lot of their transfers that came over from James Madison and maybe some Big Ten schools like Maryland and other schools like that where these players were underrated and maybe a little bit underdeveloped. And they get on campus at the University of Indiana, and they go 16-0 last season. Maybe not the best players in the country, but evaporated every last drop of potential out of those players. And Tennessee offensive line coach Glenn Ellerby, he talked with the media today and talked about some of those physical traits that you're seeing within the offensive line under Derek Owens. And he said, quote, "Yeah, absolutely, I noticed it. I guess it was the second day. They had their lift, they came up, and they were all sweaty, and a bunch of them are probably still should have had their shirts on at that point. They didn't. You're sitting there and you're looking at them walking around. You're like, man, that's a pretty different looking group of guys. So I think they feel that, and they want to go press and stain. We're not there yet to be able to finish the practice, but we will be. And there's definitely different, the physicality and strength portion of it. And when you listen to quotes like that from your offensive line coach and Glenn Ellerby, and you look at the University of Tennessee, with the teams in the SEC this season, you think Tennessee is probably set up to have one of the better offensive lines in the SEC. Obviously, you return some key pieces from last season. David Sanders goes into his first season where he's going to be fully healthy, taking a full responsibility as he moves to a slightly different position on the offensive line, a more important position, obviously, protecting your quarterback's blind side. That's the position that's going to get you paid heavy in the NFL. Caleb, when you listen to Ellerby talk about this stuff, and we talk about Derek Owens and the changes that you've seen, and we've talked about it, Deshaun Bishop, obviously, we've seen a body type change there. We've seen it from a lot of the guys on defense that we think have gotten bigger. But when you see the offensive linemen, obviously you think of offensive linemen, 290, 300-pound men, they're already pretty big, but the fact that they can get bigger, how important is that when you're going up against these teams, when you're playing a Colin Simmons coming off the edge at Texas, or when you're playing, a South Carolina that has edge rushers that can come off the edges, and obviously when you're playing very good defensive lines like an Alabama or a Texas, how important is it for your offensive line to be able to match up against those teams?
Yeah, I mean, being barely 280 versus lining up at the line at 318 is a very different. It's a different ball game when you're running up against those guys. Every pound matters when you're in this level of college football, and I think it's not even just that. It's just every position on the field seems to be just everybody's just that much bigger, that much fuller, that much more mass to throw around, and a little bit of weight. A little bit of weight never hurt anybody. A little bit of weight's usually always a good thing when you're talking about football. So it's nice to see. Every time I see something like this, I revert back to the Ohio State game when everybody ran out with their shirts off. They did not look like a Division I college football team. Pat McAfee took his fair share of shots at us during that time, and it was well deserved. It was a lot of dad bods out there.
Yeah, well, I don't think there will be too many dad bods this year. I think it'll be more of a shredded physical appearance. And William Pattison, the host of the Playbook here on Fan Run Radio, former host of Overtime, but current host of the Playbook here on Fan Run Radio, he was at practice and he shared some videos on his social media on Twitter of Ori Williams and of David Sanders. And Caleb, I don't know if you saw those videos, but I mean, those dudes, they look like dudes in all caps. I mean, those are guys that are going to be able to be there, able to, protect your quarterback, whoever your young quarterback is, open up holes for your running back to be able to get yards. I mean, this is an offensive line. We've talked about it all offseason. It's going to be one of the better units in the SEC, but, especially when you see a guy like David Sanders, a kid that, coming into his second year at Tennessee, highly recruited out of high school between Tennessee and Ohio State. You get him on campus, obviously going to stay here now. How much do you think he can improve this season with a guy like Derek Owens that's going to be helping him? Because obviously David Sanders has been a dude since high school, but now going into the collegiate level, your second season, you were really good, and you've seen some publications this season ranking him as the number one offensive lineman in the SEC. And I know we've been a little bit quick to say, well, Trevor Gooseby, at Texas is a very good player. Caden Green at Mizzou, those are some top O linemen in the SEC. But you look at David Sanders, and a lot of these offseason publications believe David Sanders can be one of those guys as well, and a top 5 offensive lineman in the SEC, many think, going into this season. How much do you think he can improve from the physical traits, that Derek Owens and the strength staff are working with him on?
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime you have a guy like Derek Owens, who just, like you said, national championship pedigree level strength and conditioning coach, he's a culture guy. He's an entire team kind of guy. It's not like you're just hiring. You're not hiring a position group coach, or you're hiring basically a culture setter for your football team. The strength and conditioning coach is probably somebody who's with every single player, I would say, the most, especially when you're talking about coming out of summer workouts and stuff. He's working out the whole team, so he's not just dealing with a certain group of guys. I think it's just as important as it is for any other position on the field. I think somebody like Derek Owens, when he gets talent like a David Sanders in there, I think it's absolutely going to improve David Sanders in every aspect of football.
Well, he also had some quotes on David Sanders. Glenn Ellerby did, obviously, the Tennessee offensive line coach, giving some great quotes today to the media. When he was asked about David Sanders and when Tennessee first started recruiting him, the physical differences between then and high school and now his second year going into, working on the offensive line here at Tennessee as a player, he said, speaking about David Sanders, quote, "Yeah, he's incredible, man. I'd love one day to be able to just walk around and look like that. Would be pretty cool." I think, too, the thing for him now is he is so much different. And there's things that he can do technique-wise that before, when he was light and not strong, he had to find ways to make up for. So I think that's the growth process in this camp for him. He's freaky talented. He's as good looking as he can possibly be. Now, man, you have the body. Now can I use it in a different way where my technique and my fundamentals can be even better? He's done that. To his credit, he wants that. He wants the coaching, and he wants the little things, and he wants to be elite, and it's credit to him. And you hear quotes like he wants to be elite. Those are the type of things that you want to hear from your blue chip talent out of high school, 5-4-star recruits all over the country. A lot of them have the size and physical advantages in high school, or, maybe they're just better in high school, but they get to college and, maybe they don't want to be better. They want to, they don't want to grind, and they don't want to, put the blood, sweat, and tears into being the best player that they can be. Obviously, David Sanders wants to be the best offensive lineman that he can be. Obviously, I don't think he's looking at it from a perspective of I want to be the best offensive lineman on Tennessee, or I want to be the best offensive lineman in the SEC. But if David Sanders plays to the 100% caliber of what he can do, he will be the best offensive lineman on Tennessee. He will be one of the premier offensive linemen in the SEC, and he can really be one of the premier offensive linemen in the entire country. And so, you hear the technique-wise, and obviously that's another thing. A lot of people, that are highly rated offensive linemen in high school, part of it is maybe because they are a physical specimen. And when they get to college and they have to have, the fundamentals and get the technique down and stuff, that can be an issue for some of these guys. That doesn't seem to be an issue for David Sanders. And Caleb, when you hear something like that, a guy that, obviously his technique, Glenn Ellerby saying, has changed as he's gotten stronger and he's gotten better, especially when speaking that David Sanders is now moving over, on the offensive line. When you're protecting the blind side of the quarterback, obviously the reason you're getting paid more in the NFL to be able to do that. You have to have size, but you also have to have high football IQ, and you have to have really good technique. When you look at, David Sanders and you see the improvements from last year to this season, how much do you think technique-wise the physical traits and the physicality that he's put on this offseason can help those traits?
Yeah, I mean, if we're just talking about just purely what he's put on weight-wise, I mean, being on that tackles position on that other side, protecting, you're usually going up against the defense's best edge rusher. I mean, that's typically where they slot their number one guy, and I think just being able to have technique like that, if you're a little bit smaller, I think you have to rely on that a little bit more. But if you're just as big as everybody and have just as good as technique as everybody, and especially these defensive linemen, there's no reason why you should ever get beat off the line. I mean, I think obviously technique is going to be a lot more important to somebody who's a little bit smaller, but I think somebody like David Sanders, if he can put those two together, he has a very good chance to be a first round draft pick in the NFL.
Well, we talk about obviously Ori Williams and how much he looked different this season, the LSU transfer, but then you also have Donovan Haslam that comes in from West Virginia, and a guy that I think a lot of people thought would, he could be a rotational piece. We'd have to see, what he looks like. Well, Glenn Ellerby had very good things to say about him today, too. Quote saying, "Absolutely the most physical dude since I've been here. Not even a question. He's violent, like Violet. That's his superpower. He's still got to be able to. He's still a little bit heavy, and he gets tired and doesn't move the way he should. He knows that. He's got to get that right. But if you're building a superhero squad, he would be the violent, powerful one, and the guys love seeing that. And they love when he's starting to understand things mentally and he's able to do things technique-wise within that. I don't know. It's like everybody cheers for him in the room. It's cool to see. And we talk about Donovan Haslam coming over from West Virginia, guy. I don't know that when you got him out of the transfer portal, you thought that this was going to be the most physical dude that Glenn Ellerby had seen since he'd been here at the University of Tennessee as your offensive line coach. Donovan Haslam obviously has a lot of untapped potential. And it almost sounds like from what you're hearing here, he has the physicality. He has the technique. He almost just has to get the body shape in the correct, places. And obviously, with what Derek Owens has done with other players on this team, I think it sounds like Donovan Haslam, if he continues to stick to the strength and conditioning, regimen, he can be able to do that as well. Because it does sound like with the size, maybe he gets a little bit tired as the reps go on. But, I mean, if you're that physical and you're that much of a superpower, that's a guy that obviously helps your offensive line a lot. And we're going to get to in a minute how having an offensive line like this can open up the rest of your offense, not just in the running game, but in the passing game, helping a young quarterback, things like that. But, I mean, Caleb, when you hear about Donovan Haslam being the most physical dude that Glenn Ellerbe has seen since he's been at the University of Tennessee, how much does that speak to how immensely talented he could be in the future as well?
Yeah, I mean, your favorite thing to hear coming out of fall camp is you love to hear these guys praising names that you've never really thought of to be like key contributors going into the season. I mean, the phrase I like to use all the time is you're playing with house money. Like, obviously we know there's names that we know and we know what we're gonna get out of those, and we know that we're expecting good things out of those guys. But then when you hear names like Donovan Haslam, and you're just that, it makes you that much more pumped up for the season upcoming, because there's names that you didn't even know about or didn't even really think about that are gonna make pretty big impacts.
And I think that speaks to, also this coaching staff's ability in the transfer portal to find some of those guys, because I think there were a couple of those guys that you got throughout the transfer portal that you thought, okay, that's a nice pickup. We'll see. I think Kyan Lee was one of those guys this year. Obviously, he's going to be starting at the corner position. Him and Ty Redmond will be on opposite sides, but those are going to be your starting corners. I think a lot of people thought, well, Kyan Lee, I haven't really heard of him too much. And then you kind of start digging on the stats and look at his one-on-one coverage, and you see this guy's a pretty lockdown corner, played for one of the best SEC defenses in the country last season at Auburn, and obviously has superstar potential on the corner. I think, last season you got Colton Hood coming over from Colorado, a guy that didn't really play as much at Colorado in 2024. And you thought, well, hopefully this guy's good. And Colton Hood ends up going very highly in the NFL draft and was a lockdown corner for you. And obviously injuries help him kind of place in there. But once he got his opportunity, he made the most of it. And I think being able to get these guys out of the transfer portal, it's not just 5-star and 4-star talent that you're landing. It's not just top 50 guys out of the portal, but Tennessee's done a pretty good job out of the portal of landing guys that maybe you didn't think were going to have as much of an impact as they ended up having. And maybe that goes into the run game this season. Outside of Deshaun Bishop, a guy that was underrated in high school, you have a Javin Gordon that comes in from Tulane, a guy that was lower recruited out of high school, out of Toccoa, Georgia. He goes to Tulane, plays for a college football playoff team last season. Obviously is going to be your RB2 behind Deshaun Bishop this season. That's clear, but I think Javin Gordon's a guy that can get you some first downs, can have really good rushing attempts. And when you look at the offensive line, obviously Deshaun has really got his body shape into a different position with Derek Owens, and he's been really locked in this offseason. But I'm excited to see what Javin Gordon looks like. And Caleb, when you look at this running back room and you look about the offensive line, there's obviously going to be holes for these guys to run in. They're going to have to spot those holes. And Deshaun Bishop is obviously, he's hard to tackle. Sometimes it takes 3-4 guys to bring Bishop down. Javin Gordon, he's quick and he has the speed to be able to get through those holes as well. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how much the offensive line plays into this. But obviously with how, experienced Deshaun Bishop has been at the running back spot, and Javin Gordon obviously played a lot at Tulane last season, you're going to have some uncertainties maybe a little bit in the passing game early in the season, having a young quarterback. How pivotal is that you have an offensive line that you can trust to have the running game work, because we talk about how important that first down is in the Josh Heupel offense. Until you get that first down, you don't really see the cycle start moving. Once you get that first down, tempo kind of keeps up. You see some shots down the field. The offense starts moving quickly. But before you get that first down, things are moving a little slower. You're trying to kind of plot for that first down. And how important is it to have an offensive line that you trust when you go out there first drive of the game, first drive of the half, we can get that first down running the football, and then we can kind of move into that quicker cycle offense that we have.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, when they think of Heupel's offense, a run first is not really what they think of, but this offense is very much so a run first type offense, especially with the talent that we have at on the offensive line this year and the talent in the backfield. There's no doubt in my mind that we're going to be able to consistently run the ball, game in and game out, drive in, drive out, no matter what. Like I fully trust us to be able to go out there, and if it's 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, to be able to just line it up and run it up the middle and be able to get a first down. I think that we have the talent, we have the size, and we have all the tools available, especially if what we're hearing out of the tight end stuff. And I know Ethan Davis hasn't been practicing, but I fully expect him to be ready come Furman. And yeah, I fully trust this offensive line and especially Deshaun Bishop to be able to run the ball. Because when you watch Deshaun Bishop, I've seen a lot of running backs. If you watch football, you've seen a lot of running backs. A lot of them are really talented, but very few of them run like Deshaun Bishop. Deshaun Bishop runs like he hates the ground. There's very few running backs that you see run like that, but he's one of them.
Well, when you talk about this O-line, too, obviously it's going to play into you're going to have a young quarterback starting this season. And you've seen young quarterbacks before where they're not necessarily a bad quarterback, but they play behind a horrible offensive line. They're getting sacked 5-6 times a game. They're running for their life, around in the backfield. I don't think that's going to happen in this offensive line, obviously. You're going to have to make the smart decisions. The offensive line can't hold up for you forever, and you have to know when to throw the ball out of bounds to avoid a sack, or when – it's best maybe to take a sack every once in a while to avoid throwing an interception or something like that. And that goes to the QB football IQ that we'll talk about in the next segment. But I do think having a veteran offensive line, I mean, it's obviously very cliche and very obvious, but that's going to help your young quarterback, whether it's Faison or McIntyre. I go back to some, quarterbacks over the past couple seasons with horrific offensive lines. I think about Colorado with Shedeur Sanders in 2023. Shedeur was running for his life on every single play because his offensive line was horrible. And, obviously Faison, I think, has the physical ability where he can escape pressure. He can scramble. He's, more of the dual threat guy, but still, you don't want a guy having to do that. And if you didn't have an O-line that you could trust, I would feel very unconfident playing most of the SEC competition, and especially teams like a Texas or a Texas A&M or an LSU, because you don't want your young quarterback running all over the field, especially early in the season, throwing interceptions and getting mentally just exhausted from what you're having to do. But I think this is an offensive line that's going to help the offense plot around the field a little bit easier. It's going to allow Faison or McIntyre, whoever wins that job, to be able to go through their progressions, go through their reads, find the open players. And as long as they're not forcing anything, as we said yesterday, I think the quarterback in this system can fit. And you mix that in with the offensive line and the running game. You mix that in with the tight ends. And when you run 12 personnel and you have the two tight ends on the field blocking, that also helps open up the running game and passing game even more. So, Caleb, when you look at the offensive line for a young quarterback, just how important is that to be able to have a good offensive line? Because you're going to see other young quarterbacks throughout the SEC this season, like a Vanderbilt. If their freshman quarterback ends up getting the job, their offensive line's probably not going to be as good. You look over at like in Arkansas, a KJ Jackson that might be winning the job over there. Good quarterback from Memphis, but if he doesn't have an offensive line, he's going to be running all over the field. Mississippi State, they got all the talent in the world with Kamario Taylor. He can do anything. He can run the ball. He can throw the ball. I mean, you saw how electric he was in the Egg Bowl. His offensive line, though, is the main question. You can be as electric as you want on your feet and through the air, but if you're constantly running for your life, it doesn't matter how good you are. Your offense isn't going to be able to work to the highest ceiling possible. But I do think that this Tennessee offense still has a pretty high ceiling due to the fact that the offensive line is going to be able to protect the quarterback.
Yeah, I think it's the single most important thing when you have a true freshman quarterback. You want to put him in the absolute best situation that you can, and I've said it multiple times on here, I don't think there's a better year for us to have an unexperienced young quarterback, because I think that our offensive line just is going to be that good this season, and all of our supporting cast around him is going to be just that good this season. Because there's a big difference between 7-8 seconds to throw the ball versus you got two guys in your face from each side as soon as the ball's in your hands, as soon as it's snapped. I think it's not a hot take. It's not an uncommon. It's not an unknown thing that your offensive line really has to hold up to have any kind of success. But I think it's just that much more important when you're breaking in a new quarterback, especially when he's only 18, 19 years old.
And I think, too, when you go back to some of those swing games, you talk about, the top teams, in the country, in Ohio State and Oregon and Indiana, they can wear down those teams in the Big Ten that they play, that are mid-level teams, because they're just better at the line of scrimmage. Same thing with Georgia, Texas, what Alabama did for decades. If they were just better than you at the line of scrimmage, you're going to win the game. Most of the football games that you see that are played can be won or lost at the line of scrimmage. There's pretty much every team has safeties that are good. They have corners that are good. They have wide receivers that are explosive, good running backs. Every team has that. But not every team has elite offensive linemen and elite defensive linemen and players that can come off the edge and create pressure on the quarterback. And Tennessee, I mean, we can get into the defensive line later in the show, but the offensive line, I think, is going to be able to compete against most of these defensive lines. Now, Playing a Texas with the Colin Simmons coming off the edge, that's going to be difficult. Playing a Texas A&M, LSU, those are going to be difficult games. I think LSU is still a winnable game. I think Alabama is definitely a winnable game. I think Texas and Texas A&M are the two toughest, games on your schedule, obviously. But when you play more of these swing games, Auburn, South Carolina, maybe a Kentucky, if they get a little bit better than some people think this season, which I think Kentucky with Will Stein and the offense that they have, they could be a little bit of a sneaky team in the SEC. When you play those swing games, I think Tennessee can win those games at the line of scrimmage. And if that's something that you're able to do and you're just able to run it down their throat and give Deshaun Bishop 30 carries throughout the night and have 200 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns on the ground like that, you're probably going to win the game. And I really do think that when you play those teams like that, especially in Auburn in Neyland or Kentucky in Neyland, where the atmosphere from the crowd, you're going to feel it too, and at the line of scrimmage, I think those games can be won, just through the trenches. I mean, do you think I'm correct in saying that?
I mean, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's why the whole playoff expansion argument to me that's kind of where it lives and dies in my mind, is because if, like, obviously when you look at something like March Madness, you see upsets all the time. You see 16s over 1, you see 15s over 2s, 14s over 3s. You would never in a million years see that in football, just because it's purely just because of the line of scrimmage. I mean, everybody has fancy toys, like you said. Everybody has really good skill position guys. Everybody has a couple guys that are probably going to play on Sundays. But what really separates the tier 1 teams of college football is those offensive and defensive linemen. Because when you're late in the third quarter, you're middle of the fourth quarter, and you're lining up against a dude who's 335 pounds and he's put you in the dirt 6 times already, it wears you down. And in overtime, and not even to mention the fact they're rotating 4 and 4 on the defensive lineman, and the guys coming in are just as good as the guys going out, and they're coming in on fresh legs. That's the difference between these top high level teams. Is it's won and lost in the trenches. Those are fun buzzwords that everybody hears people say on Game Day or ESPN, but it's the absolute truth. That's where the game is won and lost, on the line of scrimmage. And there's a big difference between if you can line the ball up and run it up the middle for 7-8 yards versus you're getting stuffed at the line of scrimmage every time and you're having to throw it 30 to 40 times a game. There's a huge difference there. That's why a lot of times if you're watching regular season games throughout the year, like, oh, this game's Alabama's playing let's say they're playing Mercer or somebody, you're like, oh, it's tied at halftime, or oh, it's by the third or fourth quarter, those teams just somehow they always seem to just eke it out. And that's why. It's because they're just that much better on the trenches and at the line of scrimmage.
Well, I think that's part of the reason why you see Derek Owens be hired this offseason,
Yeah.
because when you played Oklahoma last season, I think you got kind of worn down in that second half. I mean, you had the game in your hands at halftime. If you would have surveyed the stadium at halftime in Neyland Stadium, who's going to win that game, I think 90% of the crowd would have told you Tennessee's got it. And, in the second half, I think you did get worn down a little bit. Obviously, that Oklahoma defensive line was really good. They had a lot of good players, R. Mason Thomas, and plenty of players on that Oklahoma defense that was tough for your offensive line to be able to, hold down. You saw it in the defensive line too. You couldn't get to the quarterback in the Arkansas game. Taylor Green was running all over the place in the fourth quarter. And Arkansas came back and made that game a lot closer than it should have been. And I think you go out and you get a strength coach like that in Derek Owens, because when it's late in the fourth quarter, we don't want Jared Curtis throwing the ball all over the field to, like Diego Pavia was last season. That can't happen again. You can't lose to Vanderbilt back-to-back seasons when Vanderbilt, is quote-unquote kind of the little brother of the state. When you're the University of Tennessee, you can't be losing games like that after you've already lost to Oklahoma, a couple weeks prior. You can't, lose those type of games. You can't lose to South Carolina like you did in 2022 when if you win the game, you go into the playoffs. You can't give up 63 points. You can't. Those are the type of games that can't happen. 2023 against Missouri, when Missouri ran the ball all down your throats. Stuff like that can't happen. And especially when you're in a 12-team playoff and you can get into the college football playoff. You don't have to be perfect. You can lose a couple games and get in the college football playoff, but you have to take care of those swing games. And that's something over the past few seasons, whether it was Arkansas in 2024, Oklahoma last season. I'll stand by what I said yesterday. If you beat Oklahoma last season, I think you make the playoff. I think you beat Vanderbilt. I think you finished the season 10-2. And, I don't think Tennessee's team last season was their best team by any means under Josh Heupel. But, I think you would have had a chance possibly to get in the college football playoff if you would have beat that Oklahoma team last season. Obviously, the Arkansas game in 2024 was an ugly situation. But to me, those are the type of games that you have to win, or the swing games, especially on the SEC schedule. As Tennessee fans, we know there's probably 2 games that are going to be really difficult to win in Texas and Texas A&M. And I know Caleb is in the same facet as that as me. Is the Texas game, maybe you can sneak it out. It's in a similar spot as the Georgia game last year was. It's early in the SEC schedule. But you have an Arch Manning that's coming in that was playing his best football at the end of the season last year. If you lose to Texas and Texas A&M, you got to take care of LSU and Alabama if you want to make the playoffs. It's going to be hard, but you have to win those swing games, Caleb. And when you look at an offensive line that's not just going to be stronger physically, I think they're going to be mentally stronger too, because I think the stronger that you become physically, the more mentally strong you become. If you're physically weak, you're also mentally weak. So I think that just puts you at a one-up advantage in those swing games.
Yeah, and just my opinion has kind of changed on this the past couple days, but just looking at it, this might be a crazy thing to say. I think we're a better team on paper than Alabama. Like, just
I think they have. Alabama has, obviously, they're in a quarterback competition like us. I think their competition is more wide open between Austin Mack and Keelan Russell. I think they have 2 good receivers in Lotzier Brooks and Ryan Williams, but they couldn't run the ball effectively last season at all.
They're still going to have offensive line troubles this year.
I think they'll still have offensive line trouble. I think that they're not going to be able to effectively run the football again. The thing about Alabama is they have one of the deepest secondaries in the country.
Yeah, Alabama's always going to have a great secondary. That's kind of, Nick Saban kind of almost invented that kind of hybrid style of coverage, and then obviously DeBoer kind of runs a similar style. He's more of an offensive guy, but Alabama's defense is still it's a pedigree that's been earned, and it's a very talented secondary. Kirby does the same thing at Georgia, but
sure,
I genuinely think that by the time Alabama comes in here in October, that we're probably going to be a slight favorite in that game. And then another thing is LSU's really good on paper. Like, just looking at them top to bottom, they got great talent, but how are they going to gel? How is Kiffin? Is he going to be able to step in there and be able to field a team and have them perform to their highest potential in such a quick turnaround? It's a toss up for me. I think we have the advantage in that game, just especially with it being at home. Pile on all those variables with the new coach and new players, then stack that on to traveling to Neyland, and then not only you're going to get Neyland at its absolute 100% full throat because you're Lane Kiffin, and every time you come in here, you're going to get that. So he's not going to get cut any breaks when he comes in here. So and the A&M game again, A&M I feel like is a little bit overhyped going into the season. I think they're a really good team. Their over under win total is only 1 higher than ours. They're 8.5. We're 7.5. So I think with it being on the road, their blackout game, that's going to be an absolutely insane environment. It's going to be crazy and really difficult to play in. And obviously, it's one of Heupel's bugaboos has been road games. But you never know; you could run in there and steal one. I mean, I feel like every year Tennessee, we kind of have one game a year where we come out and we just absolutely look amazing, and it just shocks everybody. I feel like that's kind of happened every single year, and that could be that game. Who knows? Obviously, Texas is that one game you look at and you're like, hey, you're probably not going to win that one. But that's the only game that I look at and kind of feel like we don't really have much of a shot in that game. But every other game on our schedule I look at, I'm like, okay, I feel like there's a real shot for us to win.
We'll look at the YouTube chat real quick before we go to break. Joshy Boy says, you do a great job, Garrett. Joshy Boy, we appreciate you tuning in, one of the loyal listeners here on Overtime. And John Harden says, we're going to need a strong running QB as they are freshmen and you can't go by a scrimmage with your own team. Josh will regret if he picks George. And we'll talk about the quarterback competition on the other side, but I do agree that Faison does give you that more physical advantage with the legs and with the arm too through the air. But when we come back on the other side, we'll talk about the QB competition that took place again today, why I believe that you can't really name a quarterback until you get into these scrimmages when you have to go through reads and progressions and things like that you don't necessarily have to go through as much when you're just throwing the football around on a practice field. We'll discuss it all on the other side. Stick with us. It's Overtime here on Fan Run Radio.
Veterinary Surgery Referral specializes in surgeries not regularly performed by your pet's general veterinarian. They're currently accepting referrals from vets all across the country. With their newly renovated state-of-the-art surgery center and highly trained staff, clients can rely on professional and thorough care. If your vet says that your pet needs surgery or rehab, ask for a referral to Blackford Vet and let them get your best friend back on its feet. Located conveniently in West Knoxville. For more information, visit blackfordvetsurgery.com.
For over 3 years, Crumble Cookies has served the Knoxville area, from Clinton Highway to Parkside Drive. Even our friends out in Maryville have reached you, our fans, with the best cookies in the game. This fall, Crumble is gearing up for yet another fantastic season. Whether you're tailgating or looking for a pick-me-up after getting the kids from school, Crumble has you covered. Download the Crumble app to check out this week's rewards and features. And stop on by. Tell them Fan Run sent you, but don't miss the cookies.
Golf Envy Farragut is the premier indoor golf experience you've been looking for. And right now they are offering a limited number of founding memberships. Golfers can reserve their spot for just $150 before their September grand opening. Founding members receive 90 days of unlimited guest passes as well as an exclusive risk-free first month. That's right. Try out Golf Envy with no obligation. Give it 30 days, and if it's not the right fit for what you're looking for, your first month's dues will be refunded. Members will get access to their Golf Zone 2 Vision NX simulator technology, the most realistic simulator on the market, where they can play more than 300 courses and compete in leagues and tournaments with players all across the country. Golf, rain or shine, 24/7, 365. To learn more and become a founding member, visit their website at farragut.golfenvy.com/presale.
All right, back here on Overtime here on this Tuesday evening. We appreciate you listening to us and hanging out with us here on your Tuesday evening, however you're doing so. As a reminder, make sure to check out the Fan Run Radio Fox Sports Knoxville social media pages. Make sure to follow, like, subscribe, however you do get your content. And if you're listening on the YouTube or the Twitter chat, interact with us with the comment box down below. We'll get to your questions and comments throughout the show. Good first 30 minutes of conversation, kind of talking about the Tennessee offensive line. His offensive line coach, Glenn Ellerby, met with the media today and provided some insight on Donovan Haslam, the West Virginia transfer, Ori Williams, the LSU transfer, and then obviously David Sanders, who we think is set up to have a beast of a year in his sophomore season this year. We now go kind of into the QB battle again. Obviously, it's going to be something that we talk about every practice, and today was only the fifth practice of the fall. And again, I'm going to stand by the fact that a QB is not going to be named right now. A QB is not going to be named until you get closer to that September 5th opener against Furman. And to me, in practice, counting the reps of how many incompletions the guy had throughout the day, that stuff's not going to matter in the grand scheme of things of who wins the job. Who's going to win the job is who has the highest ceiling, who has the highest football IQ, and who puts you in the best position to win games. And I think you're going to figure that out over the next couple Saturdays when they do the scrimmages. You're going up against a live defense. You're going to be going up against a really good secondary, and you're going to have the live reps where you have to go through your reads. You have to go through your progressions. You have to figure out who's open, and you can't make stupid decisions. If you throw interceptions in a scrimmage like that, that's going to be concerning to the coaching staff. You don't have to blow away the coaching staff and go 15 for 15 in the scrimmage, but you got to be able to make some good throws. But I think at the end of the day, it comes down to making good decisions. And that's what I've said all offseason, because you have plenty of pieces around you in the wide receiver room. You have Braylon Staley, you have Mike Matthews, you have Rodarius Jackson, you have TK Keys, you have Travis Smith, you have everybody. At the tight end room, you have Ethan Davis, you have a Deshaun Brame who's been flashing in fall camp so far. And then in the running back room, you have a Deshaun Bishop, you have a Javin Gordon, you have a good offensive line. Again, you don't have to be Superman. You don't have to be Johnny Manziel at Texas A&M to be the quarterback at Tennessee this season. You just have to be the point guard that can distribute the ball to the wide receivers who can get upfield, hand the ball off to your running backs, have a high football IQ, know when to go deep downfield, know when to throw out of bounds, things that, as a freshman quarterback, you're going to learn more as the season goes on. But at the same time, you have a guy that's been in the system for a year, and you have a guy that was a highly touted freshman in high school. So even though Faison is a young kid and he's a young quarterback, I think he has a much higher football IQ than most kids that are 18, 19 years old that are going to be freshmen in college. But we're a sports talk radio show. We do have to go through what transpired, within the battle at camp today. And the in-on-air routes, Faison Brandon today went 11 of 17 with 3 drops, while George McIntyre went 13 of 16 with 1 drop. These numbers were provided to us by Rocky Top Insiders Ryan Sylvia, who's done a great job so far at fall camp, getting through these numbers, jotting them down, who's catching the passes, who's having the drops, all this stuff. He has great content on his articles that he does on Rocky Top Insider, so go check him out as he continues to get ready for the season and being a great reporter doing so. Honestly, again, these numbers don't really say much to me. If anything, the only thing that concerns me in this is the amount of drops, because I'm not going to say wide receiver drops were like a massive issue last season, but there were some problems. The Mike Matthews drop against Vanderbilt when you had a wide open touchdown was one that comes to mind from last season. And when you have a young quarterback, you don't want your wide receiver dropping the ball. And again, I don't really have too many concerns with dropping the ball. I know Travis Smith, I believe, had 2 drops, and TK Keys was the other drop today. But, I mean, does that concern you at all that you see that the wide receivers had 3 drops and only 17 attempts? I mean, obviously, we don't exactly know where the ball was thrown, but I think if you're using the word drop, obviously, a catchable ball to at least somewhat of an extent that you should be able to make the play on.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to say, just to sit here and just see just a yes or no check mark on a box is kind of really all we have to go by. We don't understand the circumstances. I mean, we are only in day 5 of fall camp, so I don't know if I'm really taking anything from any kind of stat like that this early into fall camp. Yeah, obviously you don't want to see drops, but I mean, it's football. I mean, every receiver is going to drop passes. I mean, I'm sure even guys like Julian Edelman probably had his fair share of drops in the NFL. If you watch, I mean, every receiver drops balls. You can kind of just cherry pick any kind of receiver you want, and they've probably had a few key drops, a few catchable balls they should have caught. But I mean, yeah, you don't want to see stuff like this, but obviously you're going to with the nature of playing sports. It's not going to be perfect. I think I'm with you. My first thought on that was 4 drops total between the 2 guys. You don't want to see that, especially when you're just running routes on air. But yeah, I mean, obviously everybody knows that Faison's kind of the front runner right now. It's kind of the consensus among people. That's where I stand. It's where you stand. I think that's pretty much where everybody here at Fan Run Radio stands with the QB battle. And I don't know. Like I said, I don't know how much stock I'm putting in those kind of stats right now, but yeah, obviously you don't want to see incompletions, especially when it's just routes on air. But we'll learn a lot when we get 11-on-11 scrimmages or 7-on-7s. We'll learn a lot more come that time.
Well, I mean, and that's what I talk about again. Obviously, I mean, you can go through reads and progressions to somewhat of an extent when you're doing this, but it's not the same as playing a live scrimmage when everything's faster. Everything in a game is always quicker. Decisions have to be made quicker. And something like this, obviously you want to make a good throw and stuff, but, I mean, the number of incompletions or completions that you have in on-air routes doesn't really, it doesn't matter to me. Like, we saw the video from last week when McIntyre, I'm not going to say he was lobbied it into the wide receivers, but his ball obviously didn't have as much velocity behind it as Faison's did. And, maybe that was the same again today. McIntyre shows up 13 for 16 on the stat sheet, but maybe a couple of those would have been picked off by the corner if they were kind of lobbed up there. And those are the type of things that, again, the media doesn't get to see every single throw that's in practice, obviously. I don't have access to the practice field. I'm just going off what other people are saying. And much of the fan base, I think anyone that has any type of football IQ in the fan base knows the QB battle is not going to be won on the practice field throwing on-air routes. Again, it's going to go back to the scrimmage. And, I think Josh Heupel, being a former quarterback of himself at Oklahoma, I think that's a good person that you want to have figuring out who's going to win the QB battle. Now, obviously, Heupel's whiffed on a QB battle before. In 2021, you saw Joe Milton get the job. Obviously, after an injury, Hendon Hooker comes in, and you never look back on it after that again. Obviously, in 2023, Milton was the guy that was going to win the job. Nico in 24, you pay a high dollar, he's going to be the quarterback. Aguilar in 25 was your main option. So this is your most important quarterback battle that you've had since 2021, and you just hope at the end of the day that Heupel's able to make the right decision. And again, I trust a guy that's a former quarterback. I think he knows that he probably made a mistake with who he named QB1 in 2021 at the beginning of the season, and I don't think it's going to happen again. But if you're Josh Heupel and you're looking at this and you're watching these scrimmages on these Saturdays, what are you looking for? Because we've talked about, obviously, the deep ball is something that is important in this offense. It's something that, Hendon Hooker was incredible with the deep ball. a lot of that was Jalen Hyatt was downfield open a lot with nobody around him. That happened a lot, but Hendon Hooker was on the money with pretty much all of those deep balls, whether it was in the LSU game in Baton Rouge, whether it was in the Alabama game where you scored 52 points. Just throughout the entire season, you had plenty of deep shots. Joe Milton was kind of more of a 50% deep ball guy, I'd say. He had, his moments where he had deep field shots. I won't forget the first touchdown of the year against Virginia in 2023 when he threw it downfield. You had moments like that, but obviously you had plenty of overthrows because he couldn't control the velocity of the ball coming out of his arm sometimes. 2024, Nico was like a 30% deep ball guy. He was, not bad in the intermediate target passes, but downfield, he was horrible. And then last season, Aguilar again was one of the leading passers in the country because he was kind of more closer to that 60-70 percentage from the deep ball. And you saw that a lot to Chris Brazzell in the Georgia game and throughout the season. Kentucky, it showed up. I think you have to be able to throw the deep ball if you're going to win this job. Obviously, I think that Brandon's physical traits, being able to run the ball, being more of a dual threat guy, kind of gives him a little bit higher ceiling too. But again, you have to be smart and you have to know if the deep ball is not open, we're not going there. We're going to throw it out of bounds here. We're going to take this and we're going to go to third and 7, or instead of throwing an interception here. So I think those are the type of things that Heupel's going to look at. But how imperative do you think it is that you can find the quarterback that is able to throw the deep ball? Because we know it is an important factor in the Heupel offense.
Yeah, you saw in 24 how detrimental it was to our offense when we weren't able to connect on those deep balls. Just look how many times in 24 did we go an entire first half without scoring a point. It's absolutely one of the most important things in this offense besides running the ball is being able to connect on those passes of 20 plus yards. It's 100% the most important thing, and everybody has those plays that they call back with certain quarterbacks, whether it's the long pass to Brazzell against Georgia when the defender fell down, or whether it's when you think of Hendon Hooker, everybody thinks of the little post or the little post route to Hyatt that scored the touchdown against Alabama late in the game. Or you think of Nico in the Vanderbilt game when he airmailed a ball about 50 yards in the air and was about 30 yards short of the receiver, and there was 3 Vanderbilt defenders just sitting there waiting on it to come down like a punt. Pretty much every big play you think of the last few years in the Tennessee offense is those deep balls.
Yeah, it's imperative.
Yeah, it's absolutely like I said earlier. It's besides running the football, I think that's the most important thing coming out of the Heupel offense going into this year.
Yeah, and obviously, I think accuracy is big, but at the same time, like again, when you're sitting there and saying in practice on these on-air routes, well, maybe McIntyre was more accurate. Like at the same time, you can be accurate, but if your ball is floating, it doesn't matter if it was thrown at the guy. If it was late, it's intercepted. It doesn't matter. So
if there's a safety rotating down, waiting to grab it out of the air, it doesn't matter how open he is. If it takes 5 seconds for it to get to him, then
yeah, I agree. But again, another day, you're going to talk about the QB1 battle. Again, the starter's not going to be named this week.
And I want to just reiterate, in 21, the entire Tennessee fan base thought and wanted it to be Joe Milton. So
yeah,
that just goes to show how much knowledge we have on it. So even if he does go with McIntyre, just remember 21, we wanted it to be Milton.
That's true. It's obviously going to be the most imperative decision that you make over the offseason because we've talked about it ad nauseum. The rest of your roster is going to be pretty good. So you want to be able to make the right decision. But on the other side, we're going to switch to the defensive side of the ball. We'll tell you the Tennessee player that was back at practice today after missing 3 practices due to illness. And we'll talk about what that means for the Tennessee defense on the other side. Stick with us. It's overtime here on Fan Run Radio.
Radiant smile you've always dreamed of? Well, here at Knoxville Smiles, we're ready to turn your dream into a reality. At Knoxville Smiles, we're more than just a dental practice. We're your partners in achieving optimum oral health. From routine cleanings and checkups to advanced cosmetics and restorative procedures, we offer a wide range of services in an environment that makes every visit a positive and comfortable experience. At Knoxville Smiles, it's about more than just treatments. We're focused on creating a welcoming environment where you feel like family. Our state-of-the-art facilities are designed with your comfort in mind, and our friendly staff is always ready to address your questions and concerns. Don't wait any longer to achieve a beautiful smile you deserve. Schedule your appointment at Knoxville Smiles today. and take that first step towards a healthier, happier you. Call us at 865-539-1776 to book your appointment today, or just visit our website at knoxvillesmiles.com.
Today, we raise a glass of Jameson Irish whiskey to the sport of football. Hear, hear!
To Gaelic football, born in Ireland in 1885 in its thrilling blend of soccer, rugby and basketball. On a massive field, 15 players kick or hand pass a round ball to score points over a bar or into a net. No pads, no helmet, no sense.
Hear, hear!
To college football, which kicked off in 1869 when Rutgers beat Princeton 6-4 in the Battle of New Jersey. With 11 players and helmets and pads, teams battle on a 100-yard gridiron with explosive pass plays and hard-hitting tackles. Unless you're called for targeting.
Hear, hear! Since 1780, Jameson Irish whiskey has been enjoyed by sports fans all around the globe. Whether your football is Gaelic, American, or even soccer, we can all agree on super smooth Jameson Irish whiskey. Hear, hear!
What kind of day is it? It's a White Claw day. Grab a pack, grab your friends. Everything else in life can wait. Your friends shouldn't. Let's go. White Claw. Grab life by the claw. Please drink responsibly. Hard seltzer with flavors. White Claw Seltzer Works, Chicago, Illinois.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. Go ahead, feel your engine. Admire that perfectly installed exhaust. Your vehicle's moving along this freeway like it was made from fresh installs and a whole lot of love. With eBay Motors, you get over 122 million parts to keep it running. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, they'll be the perfect fit every time. Plus, at these prices, well, we're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
All right, back here on Overtime here on Fan Run Radio. Again, we appreciate you hanging out with us here on this Tuesday afternoon. We're back, or I guess Tuesday evening technically. We'll now switch to the defensive side of the ball with Ty Redmond. He was back at back on practice today. He was out for the last 3 practices due to an illness, but I think it's good to have him back. Obviously, there was no thought that he was going to miss the beginning of the season or anything, but you do want these top corners to be playing, especially when you get into these scrimmages with your quarterback. You want the ones going up again, for a QB battle. That's important. And Kyan Lee and obviously Ty Redmond are going to be a really good cornerback duo, I think. I think Ty Redmond makes a massive step this season. I hate to keep going back to the narrative of Derek Owens, but I think Ty Redmond could have been maybe a little bit more physically strong when he went for some tackles and stuff like that last season. He had, I think, a couple too many hip drop tackles, and obviously he's a ball hawk. He had a lot of pass breakups last season, some interceptions. But I think his tackling could have got a little bit better, and I think that's something that you're going to see improve this season. So I'm very high on Ty Redmond. I've been high on Kyan Lee all offseason. I think he was a really good pickup from Auburn. When you look at this cornerback room, Caleb, I mean, do you think this is a really good duo? Obviously, I don't know that it's as good as like a healthy Jermod McCoy and Ricky Gibson duo, obviously, but I think this is still a really good corner duo, and I think a Ty Redmond that takes a step up and a Kyan Lee that I think is going to be really good is probably going to even be better than what you saw last year in Colton Hood and Ty Redmond, because I think Kyan Lee probably not quite as good as Colton Hood, but similar traits. And then I think Ty Redmond, I just think he's going to make a little bit more of an explosive jump this season. So I think it'll be better than that cornerback room that you saw last season by a little bit, but I still don't think it would be quite as good as a healthy McCoy and Gibson.
No, I don't think there's really anything that's as good as a healthy McCoy and Gibson. You say what you want about Jermod McCoy. I think he's probably the best corner we've had come through here in probably the last 15, 20 years maybe. That kid was something else. I think I maintain the fact that I think if he didn't get hurt and he played all last season, he would have been probably the single best guy going into this year's NFL draft. But that's my Jermod McCoy soapbox. I love that kid. But, yeah, I think – we've been spoiled the last few years with hitting on some really good corners in the portal, whether it's McCoy or whether it's Hood. Or I don't know if we're going to be as good as we have been at that position, but that's not to say that we're not going to be good. Like I still think that we got some really good talent. We got some really good guys going in there, and I think they're going to have a lot more support from the safety room this year. I think the safeties are going to be a lot better than they were last year. I think for as good as we've been at the corner position, we've been just as bad at safety. We've had some absolute atrocious safety play over the last probably five years, as long as Heupel's been here. The safety room has been probably the worst position group that we've had. I mean, the one good player that we did have transferred over to Miami and played for a national title. I mean, that just goes to show how good we were at that position. It was horrible. It was abysmal, if you will. Like, it was just not fun to watch. But yeah, I think we might be a little bit better production wise from the corner group, just because we do have that help at safety, and we do have that extra layer of protection to fall back on if those guys do end up getting beat, because you're going to get beat. Like the corners are going to get beat at a good amount this season, because we're playing against some really top level skill position players, some really good wide receivers, whether it's Cam Coleman or Ryan Williams, whoever it is. We're going to be playing against some really good wide receivers, so you're going to need some really, really good corners to be able to defend those guys. And I think that we're in a really good spot. The entire defense, I think, is in a really good spot. I think they're really the only weakness or anything you can point to in the defense is the defensive line. I think the secondary and that back end of the defense is not going to be a problem this year.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you talk about the safety room. I mean, Doles has been high on Farouk since he got here, which I think we've talked about ad nauseum too this offseason. If Farouk really is that much better than last season, I mean, your secondary is going to be a lot better. I thought that Farouk was bad last season. Like, he created turnovers, he had a lot of tackles, but he also missed a lot of tackles too. So if he's on a different level this season, obviously you have Quay Moss, who's going to be kind of more in that nickel position. And then you have, Lane and Metcalf. I mean, it's going to be a fun secondary this season. I think you're going to be able to have a little more substitutions too, because you're deep in a lot of those positions out there as well, especially the safety room. The safety room, honestly, this year is going to be one of your deepest rooms probably on the defense.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch those guys return some punts too.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. Looking back into the chat, Tennessee Vols culture says that's a bad narrative. GMAC has a strong arm. Well, I mean, I agree. I think GMAC does have a strong arm. I'm not saying that he doesn't have a strong arm. I'm just saying that the physical intangibles, I think Faison's are a little bit higher. But if GMAC outperforms Faison in these scrimmages, GMAC deserves to be, the quarterback. I'm saying from right now, I think Faison is, if you were to name a starter right now, it would be Faison. But you're not going to name a starter until you go through these scrimmages. Whoever performs at a higher level deserves to be QB1. And if you're a fan, I mean, you can have a player that you probably think is going to be better, but I don't think you should have favoritism. You don't want to be like, oh, I want, Faison to win it, and then GMAC wins it, and you're like, oh, this is going to be a disaster. Like, whoever wins the job obviously performed better during fall camp, and you got to trust that person to go into the opener and trust them for the next couple seasons. Personally, I think Faison is going to win the job, but at the end of the day, if McIntyre wins it, obviously I'm going to support McIntyre just as much as I would with Faison. So
I think he might be referring to the zip on the ball comment that we've been talking about. And what we're talking about there is from TK Keys himself. I mean,
TK Keys was the one that said that he had sizzle on the ball.
Yeah.
Again, he didn't say that McIntyre didn't, but I mean, when you watch the video, you could see that the ball was coming in at a little hotter pace with Faison opposed to McIntyre. But again, I mean, you can't tell everything from video. We're not physically there. We're watching it on a video from a guy that's standing 15 yards away. So, I mean, you can't tell everything, but it is what it is. On the other side, we'll talk about Tennessee football, where they're ranked nationally on the On3 Sports polls. The top 25 comes out. Tennessee in a pretty good spot going into the 2026 season, according to them. We'll talk about it on the other side. Stick with us. It's overtime.
Follow us on Twitter or X or whatever the they're calling it these days at Fox Sports Knox. Fox Sports Knoxville. Fan Run Radio.
Located in Knoxville's historic Old City, Barley's offers great food, live music, the best draft beer selection in town, and now your new favorite place to watch sports. Their indoor projector is perfect for any weather, and they've revamped their upstairs area with more TVs to take in all of the action. Their menu features hand-battered chicken tenders, juicy burgers, fresh salads, and the tastiest pizza in Knoxville. You can enjoy their happy hour drink specials daily from open until 6 p.m. Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. Go ahead, feel your engine. Admire that perfectly installed exhaust. Your vehicle's moving along this freeway like it was made from fresh installs and a whole lot of love. With eBay Motors, you get over 122 million parts to keep it running. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, they'll be the perfect fit every time. Plus, at these prices, well, we're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Hi, this is Bo Kregner from the Kregner Group at Realty Executives. And I know there's a lot of choices here in East Tennessee when it comes to choosing a realtor. Here's why the Kregner Group is different. At the Cregner Group, our motto is walking by faith, serving others. It's how I live my life. It's how I run my business. Here at the Cregner Group, we're committed to doing real estate the right way. Faith, honesty, integrity. The Cregner Group. Call me anytime at 865-742-1035 or visit my website at bonoshouses.com.
You're listening to FM 105.7 and AM 1340. WKGN Knoxville and W289CU Knoxville. Fan Run Radio.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jacob Wilco at Knoxville Smiles. Have you ever wanted to improve the look of your smile? We know firsthand what the power of a great smile means to a person's confidence and health. Our team of doctors can provide you with an array of options for helping you achieve your cosmetic goals. From simply moving teeth into a better position, to reversible cosmetic bonding, to full mouth implant-supported dentures. It is our goal to help patients feel good about their appearance while achieving optimal health. Want to learn more? Call us at 865-539-1776 to schedule an evaluation or visit us online at knoxvillesmiles.com.
All right, back here on Overtime here on Fan Run Radio. Great hour one to get us started here on this Tuesday evening as we enter hour number two now, where we're going to go for some more national college football storylines. We'll start out with the On3 Top 25 preseason rankings that were released earlier today. And then the second segment of this hour, we'll get into some other QB competitions around the country: Alabama, Florida, Arizona State, Clemson. And we'll kind of make our predictions of what quarterback we think is going to put those teams in the best places to succeed. But we'll get into this On3 preseason top 25. I know that we've done a couple exercises similar to this throughout the year and throughout the offseason. But again, it's kind of off-season talking season. You know, when you see these type of lists, you kind of want to look at them and see where your team fits in and what you think. So I'll read the list 25-1, and then we'll kind of get in with where we like some of the selections and where we think some of the teams are maybe a little bit overrated. And then we'll talk about where the Vols fit into all of this as well. So On3 Sports Top 25 preseason poll as Florida 25, Iowa 24, Houston 23, Louisville 22, Utah 21, Tennessee 20, SMU 19, Penn State 18, Washington 17, Michigan 16, BYU 15, Alabama 14, Southern Cal 13, LSU 12, Texas Tech 11, A&M 10, Ole Miss 9, Oklahoma 8, Miami 7, Indiana 6, Notre Dame 5, Georgia 4, Texas 3, Oregon 2, and Ohio State 1. So Tennessee sits at number 20, and I think 20 is a pretty fair spot for Tennessee. Obviously, quarterback is going to be the most uncertain position on this team, and we've talked about it before. If you can hit, gold on Tennessee with quarterback, you're a 9-10 win team. If quarterback play is a bit of a struggle, you're probably a 7-win team. I don't think this team's floor is much lower than 7. I think even if you do get bad quarterback play, there's enough just winnable games on the schedule that, again, you can win at the line of scrimmage and you can win running the ball kind of down teams' throats. I think you can do that against Georgia. I think you can do that probably against Auburn to a certain extent. I think you can do that against Vanderbilt, and I think you can do that against Kentucky. So that's 4 wins right there. You have the FCS game against Furman, and you have the Kennesaw State. That's 6. And then, even if everything went wrong, I think you'd still be able to rattle off one more. I guess against Arkansas would be the obvious one as well. So that would get you to 7. I don't see the floor being much lower than 7. But at the end of the day, I also don't see the ceiling being much higher than 9 or 10. So I think Tennessee's at 20 is a pretty nice spot. I think, you've seen some offseason polls where Tennessee's not ranked. I think we've seen some polls where they've had Tennessee as high as probably like 15, 16 is the highest I've seen. But if I was doing a non-biased ranking, ranking teams 1 to 25, I think I'd have Tennessee probably in the 20 to 25 range as well. Caleb, what do you say about this? Would you agree Tennessee, around that 20 ranking is a pretty fair spot?
Yeah, I think it's fair just from a national media perspective of anybody looking into Tennessee. I think I might have a couple gripes with some teams that are ahead of us that I think we might be a little bit better than. I think we're a little bit better than an SMU. I think we're a little bit better than a Penn State and a Washington going into the season. I think maybe Michigan's where I cut it off. I think they're going into year 2 with Bryce Underwood. They got a really good coach with Kyle Whittingham going in there. So maybe that's where I draw the line. But yeah, I think maybe a couple spots higher. I wouldn't put us any higher than probably 17. But yeah, I really have no issue with where we're slotted. I have a couple issues with a lot of other teams where they're at, but we'll talk about that later. We got to talk about Tennessee first, obviously.
When you look at this list, obviously, I'm counting it right now. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You have 7 SEC teams ahead of you, so you're 8th. I mean, most offseason polls you've seen, you've had Tennessee kind of around that 8 or 9 mark, you know, in the media rankings of the 16 teams in the SEC. I think that checks out. I think Florida's kind of been a team right next to you. You've kind of been pancaked around, you know, Missouri, Florida, Auburn. Those have kind of been the teams around you. Maybe a little bit lower than like an Oklahoma and an Alabama, but you know, most people find you to be a little bit better than Florida and Missouri and teams like that going into the season.
I think Alabama's a little high. I don't think they're the 14th best team in the country.
I think Alabama, again, is an interesting team because they have Keelan Russell and they have Austin Mack. You have Keelan Russell as more of the shiny toy that played great in the spring game, the younger player, and then you have Austin Mack, the guy that's been with Ryan Grubb and has been with Kalen DeBoer since they were at Washington. And he's the guy that's had the more experience. I think Keelan Russell probably wins the job, but at the end of the day, the question for Alabama is going to be, are they going to be able to effectively run the football? Because they could not run the football at all last season. They averaged less than 4 yards per carry. Obviously, their receiving room took, I wouldn't say a hit last season because, you know, you brought in pieces. You had Horton there, and you had plenty of other pieces, and Latsier Brooks played good in the playoff. But, I mean, Ryan Williams, I guess Ryan Coleman Williams is what he's going by now. He took a little bit of a step back last season. He battled, I mean, he led the country in drops last season. And for a guy that was as dominant as he was last season, or excuse me, in 2024, I mean, the moves that he put on Georgia in that game as a true freshman, I just thought that he was a different receiver last season. And probably more likely that he gets back to the way that he played in 2024 than he did in 2025. He still had good games. He played good against Wisconsin last year, but I think that wide receiver room is not quite as deep as some other teams in the SEC. But at the end of the day, their defense is going to be where they win them games. They have plenty of talent on defense, on the defensive side of the ball. So I don't have much of a problem with Alabama around 14. I mean, there's still, 6 or 7 SEC teams ahead of them. So I think that's pretty fair if you're looking at it from that perspective. I think Ole Miss is probably, I mean, I guess where they deserve to be, I would have them ahead of Oklahoma probably. I think Ole Miss is.
I think Oklahoma is a little bit too high.
Yeah, I mean, Oklahoma's another team. They have a really good defense coming back. How good is John Mateer going to be? Obviously, John Mateer was an elite quarterback in 2024 at Washington State. And last season at Oklahoma, battled the injury with the thumb. You know, it didn't really play too great the second half of the season, especially through the air.
I think if he sits out that Texas game, I think you see a completely different John Mateer.
I agree. And I think that was a game that he really wanted to play because that was his first Red rivalry, Red River rivalry that he got to play in. And obviously the game there at the Texas Fair, that's such a great environment, one of the better college football rivalries in the sport. And if you go to Oklahoma, you want to play that game. And I think he really wanted to play that. But again, to your point, I think the injury really hurt him throughout the season. And I just think that his physicality wasn't the same, and he wasn't able to throw the ball the way that he wanted to with that finger injury that he had. I think Ole Miss, I mean, as much as I have said before, like that the Charlie Weiss going to LSU with Lane Kiffin, they could take a little bit of a step back offensively. You still have a really good wide receiver room, in my opinion. I like what they brought in with Jonte Cook and Darryl Gill. I think I like Jonte Cook a little bit better than Darryl Gill, but I like Jonte Cook a lot, former 5-star. It took him a little bit of a while to kind of get his feet underneath him. He had some off-the-field issues, but he was a good receiver at Syracuse last year. And then obviously you probably bring back, I mean, there's no probably about it. You bring back the best quarterback and running back duo in the country of Kejuan Lacey and Trinidad. A lot of people have Trinidad Chambliss as the number one quarterback in the country. And with Ahmad Hardy having some physical problems over this offseason and the unfortunate circumstances that he had, I think it's very fair to have Kejuan Lacey as the number one running back in the country. So you potentially have the number one quarterback and the number one running back on the same offense. And they did lose some pieces on the defensive side of the ball, but they still have Will Eccles. They still have Prince Well. Like, there's still a lot of pieces there on the defensive side of the ball. I think Texas and Georgia are most people's pick to make the SEC championship game. And maybe Ole Miss, lose it. Maybe they do lose 4 games this season or 3 games and go 8-9. But I mean, I think at this point, Ole Miss is still, I would have them probably closer to the 7th ranked team than the 9th ranked team. I know that's kind of nitpicking a little bit, but I personally would have them ahead of Oklahoma.
Yeah, I agree there. I personally would have them ahead of Oklahoma as well. I'm really high. I'm really high on Ole Miss, and I think A&M is another team that I think might be a little bit too high. I would probably put Texas Tech and maybe an LSU ahead of an A&M. I think A&M is going to be a really good team, but I don't think they're going to be a top 10 team in the country by any means. Just looking outside of the SEC, I think Louisville on here. I think Louisville. I love that Louisville's on here in general. I would like to see Louisville just a little bit of a touch higher. I did some stuff on my own. I made a video on my own personal stuff, and I have Louisville as one of my sleeper teams this year to maybe win the ACC or play for the ACC title game and maybe make a college football playoff. Really high, really high on Louisville this year. I mean, Isaac Brown in the quarterback. I don't even Lincoln Keyholes. That's how you say his last name.
Yeah, Keenholz.
Threw for 1,200 yards, 11 touchdowns last year. I don't know. I really like this Louisville team. I'm really high on them as well. I think Houston's a little bit low. I mean, me and you both have been banging the Houston drum for the last couple of weeks, so
yeah.
we're on the same page there. I think I'd maybe leave out an Iowa. I'd probably leave out a Florida. I think a lot of times with these on 3 lists, the bigger brand teams get a little bit of leeway when it comes to these 20 to 25 slots in these rankings. So I think maybe those teams aren't the 24 and 25th best team coming into the season, but I see why they make the list. This is a compilation of a bunch of different people's opinions. So obviously you're going to get a lot more big brands like Florida in there. So
yeah, I mean, I think I would probably have maybe one G5 team in here. I mean, definitely. I think Boise State, in my opinion, is probably the best G5 team entering the season. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about, I think the American, though, the American conference is so deep this season, they're going to kind of like self-cannibalize themselves, and they're just going to beat each other up. I think Boise wins the Pac-12 this season. I think Boise probably represents the G5 playoff. I wouldn't be surprised if like New Mexico out of the Mountain West did it. I think Liberty's really good, but they played JMU week 1, which is going to be a tough game. So I just think
crazy that we're talking about Pac-12 as a group of 5.
I know the Pac-12 kind of annihilated themselves a couple years ago. I will say that the Pac-12 this season, it's going to be fun to have 2, West Coast conferences.
Yeah,
you're going to have the Pac-12.
Executed them.
Yeah, they did, and I mean it was really unfortunate for Oregon State and Washington State because I mean they were left in the dust for nothing. They were playing on the CW network at 11 o'clock at night, against Sam Houston State.
Oregon State's nothing now.
Yeah, and I think they have a little bit more optimism because they hired the Alabama wide receiver coach, DeMarcus Shepard, to be their new coach, and I think he's added some excitement behind the program this year. But I think it is going to be fun to watch 2 West Coast team or 2 West Coast conferences like that because I love the Mountain West.
Oh yeah,
and I think the new form Pac-12 is going to be fun too. I just think Oregon State and Washington State over the past couple of years, like recruiting took a hit, and
oh yeah.
I mean, Oregon State lost to Sam Houston State last year. Sam Houston State was abysmal. But hopefully the Pac-12 is a good conference. The Louisville conversation is an interesting one because I think Louisville, as high as I am on Ole Miss, I think Louisville could possibly be live for the first week. Louisville returns Cleve Lubin, who's one of the best defensive players in the country. Obviously, Isaac Brown and Kewan Brown, I think, when healthy, is the best running back room in the country. Lincoln Keenholz will have to see exactly what he does. They lose some pieces in the wide receiver room, but I really like Louisville. I think Jeff Brom is a really good coach. Houston, a team that I would have put higher. Part of that is just because I trust Willie Fritz. Willie Fritz has won everywhere. He's won at Georgia Southern. He's won at Tulane. He's winning at Houston now. And I look at the Houston offense. They're going to be, I think Texas Tech will have the best offense in the Big 12. I think Houston could have the second best offense. And Texas Tech is going to have questions without Brendan Sorsby. I trust Will Hammond because he looked good when he played last season. And again, he has a plethora of options around him. But I really like Houston. I like that wide receiver room a lot. I think Amari Thomas is one of the best wide receivers in the country.
Definitely the best wide receiver in the Big 12.
Yeah, Trent Walker comes over from Oregon State. He was really good there last season. Kobe Young is going to be a breakout receiver for them. Mekhi Hughes, I really like at the running back position. They brought over Patrick Overmeyer from UTSA. He was one of the best tight ends in the group of 5 last season, so I really like him. And then I think their defense is going to be good too this season. So I think Houston and Texas Tech, they play each other week 3 on a Friday night game. I think it's at 8 o'clock. That's going to be a massive game. And honestly, the winner of that game, I'm not going to say
driver's seat for the Big 12.
They're definitely in the driver's seat for the Big 12. I'm not going to say it's like a cakewalk or anything because the Big 12, I think there's a lot of teams that have an opportunity to make some noise. BYU, I really like their defense. I really like what they have in the linebacker room. I have questions about their wide receiver room, though, because they lost Parker Kingston and Chase Roberts last season, and they don't really have a returning wide receiver. JoJo Phillips, I think, could be that guy for them. Tiger Bachmeier, which is Bear's brother that comes over from Stanford, could be that, but he hasn't really had starting reps in the last 2 years. So I have concerns about their wide receiver room, as good as the Bear Bachmeier and LJ Martin running back quarterback duo is. And then Penn State, I also have some questions with. I think Penn State made a great hire with Matt Campbell, and I think that they have a good quarterback in Rocco Beck, and I think that they have some good receiver pieces in Escladin and some of the other guys that they bring over from Iowa State. But the reports of the running back room with Hansen right now, who comes over from Iowa State, have not been great so far. So I think Penn State will be decent, but I don't think Penn State's going to be a better team than what you saw from the majority of the James Franklin era, at least for the first year. I know you're a person too that you've been a little lower on Penn State this offseason as well. And it's not because I don't trust the Iowa State players. I think they bring over a lot of good players. I just think that the physicality at Penn State and the Big Ten is going to be a little bit different. I think, quarterback play is going to be fine. I don't know that I 100,000% trust the run game that they have this season. They bring in some nice offensive pieces, like I said, and they have a running back room that'll be decent, but Carson Hansen was supposed to be kind of their RB1 this season. They bring over James Peoples, who's going to be good too, but if Carson Hansen's not able to effectively rush the ball this season, I do think that limits the Penn State, offense a little bit, even with Escaldin and Chase Sowell.
Yeah, they play a little bit of a favorable schedule, too. They don't play Ohio State or Indiana. They get USC at home. They do have to go to the Big House and play Michigan in Ann Arbor, but that's probably the toughest game they have on their schedule. I think they're in a good spot. I think it's going to be a little bit different of a rebuild because I think they're going to take a step back. From just the Franklin era in general, I think they can probably have a little bit better of a team than they had last year, but I don't think that they're going to surpass any kind of milestones that James Franklin wasn't able to. I think they hired Matt Campbell and got rid of James Franklin because they wanted to win national titles. I definitely don't think they're going to be in any kind of position to do anything like that this season. I don't even really think they're going to be in a position to make a playoff or a Big Ten championship game for that matter. But I think with the team they got, I think they can win 9 games, relatively. I won't say easily, but They play Wisconsin at home. They play Northwestern on the road. They play Purdue at home. They play Minnesota at home. Their road games are Maryland, Washington, Michigan, and Northwestern. So I think if they could go 2-2 on the road and then maybe eke out a win against USC at home, and then I think they'll probably split that Wisconsin-USC series between those two. I don't think they're going to win both of those, but if they can win one of those two and then go 2-2 on the road in conference play, I think that's a really successful season for Matt Campbell's first year in Penn State.
If you looked at this list, how far back would you say is the cutoff spot where if that team played to the highest level that they could this season, they still wouldn't be able to win a national championship? For me, LSU at 12 is the last team. I think USC at 13 is a good team. They're a playoff team if they play well this season. I just still can't trust their defense. And by winning a national championship, I mean everything goes right. Like a kind of a Miami run where you're the last Power 4 team in and you go run on a play. I say LSU because they bring in so many transfer portal additions. They could go 11-1. They could also go 8-4.
Yeah, I definitely don't think USC can. I would probably put my cutoff at probably Ole Miss at number 9. I don't think A&M can go on a run and win. I don't think Tech without Sorsby is a national title contender. I think they're definitely a fringe playoff team, like a 10-2, 11-1 type team that'll make that first round of the playoffs and probably have a home game. But I don't think Tech is a team that I can surefire pick to win a national title. I think any team ahead of them can. I think Oklahoma definitely can. I think Miami, Indiana, Notre Dame, all the way up the list. I think all those teams definitely can. I think if everything goes right for Ole Miss, they're definitely a national title contending team. I think they don't really have any glaring holes anywhere. But then, like, you look at a team like Texas A&M, they definitely don't have any glaring holes anywhere either. But you just want to see a little bit more out of Elko. You've seen a lot of good stuff out of Elko. I just don't know if I've seen that like title winning pedigree out of Elko yet. If I've seen anything like that from them, obviously there's a big difference between can't and hasn't yet. With coaches winning a title, I mean, I think this conversation kind of got completely thrown up and shot in the air last year when Indiana went on their run and won the national title. I mean, I don't think anybody in their right mind would have guessed that Kurt Cignetti was going to go to Indiana, win a title in 2 years. So I think it's a completely different conversation now than this would have been a couple years ago. I think if you would have asked me at the beginning of last season this exact list who would have been able to win it, I probably would have put the cutoff at like number 4 or 5 with Georgia or Notre Dame. But yeah, I think probably an Ole Miss for me at number 9. I think there's 9 teams that if everything goes 100% to plan and they have a dream season, they can definitely win a national title.
I get confused again on some of these lists. I understand Indiana loses a lot of production from last season, but I just think that them being 6 is still a little bit disrespectful.
Yeah.
Ohio State obviously is going to have a really good offense. I think their defense is going to be good, but I don't think their defense is going to be quite what you've seen over the past couple seasons. You've had so many players on that defense make it to the NFL over the past couple of seasons. And Oregon, I think Oregon and Texas, in my opinion, have the two, like, I would say Oregon, Texas, Indiana. You could throw Notre Dame in there. Like, those are the most complete rosters in football. Like, Georgia has a really good roster, but like, they're not going to throw the ball very much. So I wouldn't say like their wide receiver room obviously is anything that's going to be, electrifying, but they have a really good tight ends. They have a really good running game. Gunnar Stockton's good. They have a really good defense, but like, I just look at the Oregon team and there's just no holes. Like, you have Evan Stewart, you have Iverson Hooks, Jeremiah McClellan, you have DeCorian Moore at the wide receiver room. Jaheim Johnson is going to be your tight end, or Jamari Johnson is going to be your tight end. Obviously, Dante Moore is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And then, I mean, you have Coy Parrish at safety that comes over from Minnesota. He was insane last season. You have Brandon Finney back at corner. He was insane. Like, I think Oregon probably has the best roster, like, going into the season, like, most complete. But, like, Indiana's right there. I understand that people are saying Josh Hoover is a regression from Fernando Mendoza. But, like, Fernando Mendoza, when he came over from Cal, wasn't like a groundbreaking football player. He was a good player. He didn't throw many turnovers at Cal, but I mean, no one saw him as the number 1 draft pick. No one saw him as the Heisman Trophy winner. I think Josh Hoover in the Cignetti offense is going to flourish. I think he's not going to be asked to do what he did at TCU. I think their rushing game could be very similar to what it was last season because you bring in Turbo Richard from Boston College, who was really good last season. I think their offensive line is going to be better than last season. And even though in the wide receiver room they lose Elijah Surratt and Omar Cooper, you still have plenty of receivers that come back. You have Charlie Becker that comes back. You bring in Chaz Preston from Tulane. You bring in Nick Marsh from Michigan State. And then on the defensive side of the ball, you got Stephen Daly, who's allowed to come back now. You bring in 2 of the Kansas State guys that were really good last season. And then on more on the back end, you have plenty of guys in the secondary, even though you lose a D'Angelo Pons. And then in like the linebacker room and stuff, you have a Elijah Hardy. I mean, they're Tyreek Tucker up front. I think the Indiana roster is still a top 3, top 4 roster. And then on top of the fact that you have Kirk Cignetti, who in my opinion is the best coach in college football, I understand the debate's going to be between him and Kirby because Kirby's won the 2 national championships back to back. But I just don't think you can put it behind Indiana. And I've almost talked myself into the fact that I think that they could win the national championship again this season.
Yeah, Indiana, personally, my top 3 would be Notre Dame, Texas, Indiana. I think those are the 3 best teams in the country, looking at them from my perspective. Obviously, Oregon would be right up there with them, but like obviously preseason is a little bit different because you don't know what really they're predicting. You don't know, are they predicting these are the 25 best teams going into the season, or is this what we think the 25 best teams are going to be by the end of the year? Obviously, you don't know what their thought process is behind any of this. It really changes if you do know that, but I don't know. The one question that I always have with Georgia every year, and obviously this is not calling into question Kirby. I think Kirby is one of the greatest coaches we've ever seen. Learned from the best, and he obviously knows what he's doing. But you see what he gets out of these quarterbacks like Stetson Bennett or Gunnar Stockton, and you just wonder what could a guy like that do if he had a Dante Moore, or if he had an Arch Manning, or somebody like that, a CJ Carr. But how good could that offense be? Because obviously, when you think of Georgia, you think of defense, and they have a pretty good offense. But
I think that's kind of what Georgia wants their offense to be, though.
Yeah.
Like, if that makes sense. Like, you've had so many of the tight ends that have come through over the past couple of years. Last season, it was Oscar Delp. These get drafted by the Saints. You always have the good running back room, and Nate Frazier coming back. And then, obviously, you had such an electrifying, screen game that you had last season. But, I mean, they don't really have, like, wide receiver. Like, their offense isn't wide receivers go vertical and get deep.
No.
Like, that's not what they
it's very
do.
pro style. You don't ever know what their receivers' names are, even. Most
Yeah.
of the time.
I mean, obviously, they've had a handful that have come through in the past couple of years that have been good. But, I just don't think that that's what they're looking to do. I mean, I know Colby Young last season, I mean, he broke his leg last year, but I mean, he was probably like their best wide receiver, like that was a downfield, vertical threat. But I just don't think that's what Kirby wants to do. So, like, I understand your point of like if he had a Dante Moore, but like at the same time, like I don't think he needs one.
Yeah,
like, I just feel like their talent would almost go to waste in that system.
Yeah, like obviously he's proven that he doesn't need one, but I'm just thinking of a what if scenario of like what if they did have an offense like an Ohio State or an Oregon to kind of pair up with that defense.
Sure. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's
they've been
it's
struggling.
fair.
I mean, the last few years, that's kind of been their thing, is that they've choked and they've lost, whether it's they're losing to Ole Miss or they're losing in the playoffs to somebody. They win a lot of SEC championships, but they obviously had that back to back in 21 and 22 or 22 and 23 with the national titles, but you kind of haven't really seen them make a super heavy push towards another one. But obviously that's kind of being a little unfair to Kirby. Maybe he just won 2 just a couple years ago, and you're saying he's a choker because he's not won in the last 3 years. But I don't know.
I think Washington is an interesting one too. I think they're one of the more interesting ones. As much as the situation of how ugly the DeMond Williams situation was, where it looked like he was going to go to LSU and then decides that he's going to come back to Washington, and the timing of when that was announced and everything was very bad. But at the same time, I think Washington, it brings back some good production this season. They do lose some pretty key pieces from last year's team. Jonah Coleman, Adam Muhammad, who's now at Cal. But I think that their schedule, which I'm looking up right now, and I've looked at this multiple times this offseason, I think their schedule sets up pretty good for them. They play the Apple Cup week 1, which, Washington State I don't think is in the same realm right now that Washington is. But I look at some of these games, a lot of the swing games that they play are going to be in Washington. They host Indiana at Husky Stadium in Seattle in late November. In Indiana, I think they're going to go 10-2 or 11-1 this season. And I think if Indiana does lose a game, I think at Washington could be one of those games. Now, I think Washington's definitely going to lose the last week of the season at Oregon. I think Oregon has the better roster. It's at home. But I mean, some of these home games I think set up good for them. Minnesota's a team that's a swing team in the Big 12 or in the Big 10. They get them in Seattle. Iowa's a team that's kind of a swing game. They get them on a Friday night in Seattle. And then obviously the Indiana game. So I look at Washington. I think they could be a 9-10 win team if everything goes right to them. Yeah, and it's a difficult place to play. You've seen teams that have had tough times there. So I think Washington's a team that I could see moving up. I really like Jed Fish as a head coach.
That's another thing that the Big Ten took away from us was competitive Apple Cups and competitive Civil Wars.
Yeah,
because I mean, when you throw teams we still get both those games this year. Or do we get Civil War this year? I think we get that in the first couple weeks of the season.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you do. But the Apple Cup obviously never week 1.
Yeah. So you get these teams play. Oregon and Oregon State played last year and it was 41-7. So you still get the
actually Oregon. Yeah, Oregon doesn't. They don't play Oregon State this year.
They don't. Okay,
they play Oklahoma State, Boise, and the non-con. which that Oklahoma State game, I think, as good as the Oklahoma State offense is, the defense might give up 50 points to the Oregon offense.
It's that. They might give up more than that. But yeah, like you still get those games every now and then. You still get an Apple Cup. You still get a Civil War. But when you take away these teams, when you take away the Pac-12, you're not pulling the same resources. You're not getting the same kind of media funding or like the media rights deals or whatever. You're not getting the same kind. It's not the same prestige of school to go to Oregon State now as it used to be, or Washington State or something like that. So now you don't get a fun Apple Cup or a fun, like, Civil War was one of my favorite rivalries. Like, growing up, I loved watching that game.
It does suck to see some of the rivalries be ruined and stuff.
Bedlam.
That always does stink. One last team that I'd throw on here would be Cal. Now, Cal is going to be one of those teams that has a great offense. It's going to come down to what they have on defense because they lost one of their top linebackers to the portal last season. They lost some guys on defense. The offensive side of the ball, they're loaded. All right, they have JKS, who could be the number one quarterback taken off the board in the 2028 NFL draft. They have Adam Muhammad, who comes over from Washington, who was a really good running back behind Jonah Coleman last season, who will now be running back 1. They have Dorian Thomas, who's going to be one of the better tight ends in the country. They have Ian Strong, who comes over from Rutgers, who's a freak. They have Chase Hendricks, who comes over from Ohio, who's really good. I think this is going to be a really good offense. Cal's going to be a team that I'll be staying up to watch a lot of late-night Cal games, at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. I think Cal is a team with Tosh Lupoy coming in. I think they're a team that you could sneak in your top 25 if you wanted to. I know I've kind of been riding the Calgorithm this year, and I've kind of been riding the Cal momentum this offseason, but I am a JKS truther. I do like that what they have in the offensive pieces and the skill position. I think that their defense will be able to survive most of the ACC schedule. They get Clemson at Berkeley this year. I think Cal has a lot of winnable games. I wouldn't mind seeing Cal somewhere in the 23 to 25 range on a list like this.
Yeah, just I'm trying to pull up the Cal schedule real quick because there's something I wanted to confirm.
The UNLV game that they play early in the season, that's going to be a trap game, or not really a trap game. I think they're going to have respect for UNLV, but UNLV is going to be one of the top G5 programs this year. Dan Mullen obviously has done a fantastic job out there. The UCLA game week 1 is going to be fun. It's going to be at Berkeley, but you're going to get Nico versus JKS. A lot of people have said Nico's made progression this offseason.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of NFL talk about him.
So we'll see what he looks like. You get at Syracuse. I think that's a winnable game. Wagner. I mean, you could be 3-0 going into the Clemson game. Yeah. I mean, there's not too many definite. I wouldn't really say there's any games on their schedule where I say they're definitely losing this game. I mean, they're obviously not going to go 12-0, but 10-2 on the schedule is not impossible if you start out 3-1 or 4-0 to start the first month of the season.
Yeah, I think in this is why I wanted to pull it up, because the biggest thing for them is, so they go to Syracuse in the second game of the season. Obviously, that's a big travel day. That's September 12th.
It's about as big as a travel as you can get.
Yeah, but they don't go back to the East Coast until October 31st to play NC State.
Yeah, and I made a tweet about that on Twitter. Yeah. That's going to be a tough stretch. They play Virginia, I think, NC State, and
NC State and Virginia,
SMU,
NC State, and Virginia. Which SMU is a Texas school, so that's still a pretty good travel. But it's not like going to Syracuse, New York. It's not a 3,000-mile trip.
And they have a bye week in between, I think, in at least one of those games. Well, definitely one of the games.
They have a bye week after NC State. So between NC State and Virginia, they have a bye week.
But unfortunately, that's what happens when you have people in suits making decisions that don't care about college football. You have Cal, who sits right next to the Pacific Ocean and the Atlantic Coast Conference, traveling, east of the Mississippi 2 out of 3 weeks in a row, and then to Dallas, Texas the other week. Didn't make a whole lot of sense, but there's a lot of stuff in college football that didn't make a whole lot of sense right now. What we are going to try and make sense of on the other side of the break is some of these other QB battles around the country. Aaron Philo, Tramel Jones, Keelan Russell, Austin Mack, Cutter Boley, Mikey Keene. Who is it going to be? Who are going to be some of these quarterbacks that win the QB1 job? Not just the Tennessee quarterback job, but some of these other jobs around the country, throughout the SEC and the country. We'll be back on the other side. It's overtime.
For the fans, by the fans, this is Fan Run Radio, Knoxville.
Hi, this is Bo Kregner from the Kregner Group at Realty Executives, and I know there's a lot of choices here in East Tennessee when it comes to choosing a realtor. Here's why the Kregner Group is different. At the Cregner Group, our motto is walking by faith, serving others. It's how I live my life. It's how I run my business. Here at the Cregner Group, we're committed to doing real estate the right way. Faith, honesty, integrity. The Cregner Group. Call me anytime at 865-742-1035 or visit my website at bownoshouses.com.
Have you ever found yourself wishing your clothes looked brand new again? Whether it's your favorite suit, that little black dress, or your comfy winter coat, Crown Cleaners can make it happen. From stubborn stains to delicate fabrics, the expert team at Crown Cleaners uses the latest cleaning technology to ensure your clothes come back looking and feeling fresh. Visit one of their 2 area locations, Kingston Pike on Bearden Hill or South North Shore Drive near Dunkin' Donuts. Online at crowncleaners.com. Crown Cleaners, a tradition of excellence.
Attention service members and veterans. Introducing the Griffin Law Firm, your trusted ally in military legal matters. From court-martials to benefit claims, at Griffin Law, your mission is their mission. Here's VFL Marshall Griffin.
As a veteran and retired military attorney, I've successfully defended lifelong benefits and helped preserve professional futures. So I know that when you hire a military justice lawyer, you maximize your chance to get relief. With my unique experience, I can advocate for you because there's no military matter that's too big or too small. Let us help you make these critical decisions that could affect the rest of your life. Remain silent. Request counsel. Call Griffin Law.
For a free consultation, call 888-707-4282. That's 888-707-4282. Or just visit griffinlawdefense.com.
All right, back here on Overtime here on this Tuesday evening. We appreciate you hanging out with us however you choose to do so. Here on another day, getting closer to the college football season. And in fall camp, the QB1 battles around the country are some of the most important things to keep an eye on. We're going to go through some of the top quarterback battles throughout the nation, and we're going to talk about who we think is going to win the job. And we talked about Alabama in the last segment and the On3 preseason ranking, where they had Alabama in relation to Tennessee and some of the SEC teams. And we talked about how inefficient Alabama's run game was last season. And even though they had some wide receiver pieces, Isaiah Horton, Ryan Coleman-Williams, Latsier Brooks, I thought Ryan Coleman-Williams took a step back last season, obviously, from 2024. Led the country in drops last season.
Do we have to call him that?
What's that? Ryan Coleman-Williams? Well, I mean, I guess legally that's what he wants to be by now.
Huh. I guess he's wanting to, remove himself from that freshman season he had.
Well, I think if I was him, I would want to be returning back to the 2024 form because last season, again, his stats weren't terrible, but way too many drops. You know, he had good games. He played good against Wisconsin, but he had butterfingers throughout much of the year. Now, I'm not saying he can't become one of the top wide receivers in the country again this season. He could. He's going to be probably the number one option in that room. Who's going to be throwing him the passes, though? Is it going to be Austin Mack, the kid that's been around college for a while, that was at the University of Washington with the Alabama offensive coordinator now, Ryan Grubb, and with Kalen DeBoer? Or is it going to be Keelan Russell, the younger guy, probably has a little bit higher of a ceiling? Maybe Austin Mack could be a little more, a little less reckless with decision making, but I think Russell's one of those guys. He might make some mistakes, but he also has a far higher ceiling. If I was the Alabama coaching staff, I think I'm going with Keelan Russell in this one. He's the younger guy. He can be your quarterback of the future. He's kind of more of the shiny car, but I just think he played great in the spring game. He threw for a lot of touchdowns in the spring game, a lot of yardage in the spring game. I think if I was Alabama, it has to be Keelan Russell. I think Keelan Russell last season was closer as the QB2 behind Ty Simpson than it was Austin Mack. Obviously, Ty Simpson the second half of the year played significantly better than he did the first half of the year. But I just think Keelan Russell adds a little bit more to their passing game, a little bit more to the dual threat game. And I just think Keelan Russell overall has the higher ceiling. And when you have two quarterbacks that probably have pretty similar intangible traits, you got to go with the guy that has the higher ceiling. So I would say Keelan Russell would be my pick for QB1 between this battle. Caleb, when you look at this QB battle, who are you picking in this one between Keelan and Austin?
It's kind of tough because you can kind of gauge the fan base over there. Obviously, a lot of them wanted to be Keelan Russell. They saw how he played in the spring game. We all saw how he played in the spring game. It's pretty obvious. It's kind of like the same kind of a similar situation we're in, where they got the new shiny toy versus kind of an experienced veteran. Obviously, Austin Mack got a lot more experience than McIntyre does, but to a similar extent, it's kind of the same. I personally think it's going to be Keelan Russell. I think that's what you paid him. That's what you paid him to do. You paid him to come there and play quarterback. I don't 100% know the temperature over there, but that could be a potential transfer portal risk if he doesn't start. Obviously, he wants to come in and play. This is his second year in the program. I think it's ultimately going to be Keelan Russell. It's just kind of what it's shaping up to be like. So I'll go with Keelan Russell, but I don't think Austin Mack is a bad option at quarterback. I think when you look at the landscape of college football and you look at teams that are winning titles, it's teams that with quarterbacks that might not be as uber talented as some of these younger guys, but it's these 22, 23, 24-year-olds that have been around the game really long and around their coaches a really long time. I mean, he's been with, like you said, he's been with DeBoer and Grubb since the Washington days. So they know each other. He knows the offense really well, and I think both of them are good options, but I think it's ultimately going to be Russell.
We'll move to Florida, another SEC team currently in a quarterback battle. Aaron Philo and Tramel Jones. I think a lot of people thought when Aaron Philo transferred from Georgia Tech, obviously he was Haynes King backup last year. I think a lot of people thought he was automatically going to be QB1. It seemed like a situation between him and John Summerall where John Summerall liked him, wanted him to be the QB1. Tramel Jones, 19 years old, 4-star quarterback, was really good in high school. This is another one of those competitions where who has the higher ceiling, I think. Because, again, I think intangibles of these players are pretty similar. Aaron Philo, he played good in the game that he was the quarterback in last season for Haynes King when he was injured. He went 21 of 28 for 373 yards, had a touchdown, had an interception. The problem is they were playing Gardner Webb. I don't know how much of, you can look at the film and see the throws that he made and stuff, but I don't think that I can put too much stock behind what he did against an FCS team that wasn't very good last season. Tramel Jones obviously doesn't have that much experience either, but I think at the end of the day here, I'm still picking Aaron Philo. You went out and you got him through the transfer portal. I think Tramel Jones is a good quarterback, and obviously last season he had a couple touchdowns. I'm looking back at his stats right now as well too. But again, he really only played against Long Island, another FCS team, 12 of 18, 2 touchdowns, 131 yards. Against Kentucky, he went 9 of 17 for 60 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. I think this is going to be kind of similar to our battle. It's going to come down to who wins it on the field in the scrimmages. But again, I just think Aaron Philo right now, because Aaron Philo, I watched him play at Georgia Tech, and there was a lot of smoke around him in Atlanta last season. And someone that's from Atlanta myself, I know a lot of people that know a lot about Georgia Tech football. They were really, pretty angry when Aaron Philo entered the transfer portal because he was supposed to be the next guy up for them after Haynes King left. Obviously, they go out through the portal and get Alberto Mendoza. At the end of the day, though, I think Philo wins this job. But I could see either guy winning it.
Yeah, I'm not really as in tune to the Florida quarterback battle as I am to some of these others around the country. But just looking at it, when you go out and get a guy like him from the transfer portal, that's what you pay him to come in there and do. I think a lot of these teams, if you don't have a surefire superstar quarterback like a Trinidad or a Dante Moore or somebody like that, I think there's going to be a little bit of noise when it comes to QB battle. I think a lot of teams and a lot of coaches like to have QB battles because position group battles, no matter what it is, makes each guy better. If you got a quarterback of the same talent level of a guy like Aaron Philo and there's nobody really competing with him in practice, obviously there's going to be motivation there to impress coaches, but how much motivation is there really if you already know you got the job locked up going into next season? So I think a lot of these quarterback battles, not saying that this is one of them, but a lot of these are engineered to kind of just get more out of guys. But I think Aaron Philo is ultimately going to end up being the guy.
We'll move out west. Arizona State, Cutter Boley versus Mikey Keene. This is an interesting one to me. Cutter Boley was obviously a guy that was at Kentucky. He was a Lexington kid, and he transfers away from Kentucky as Will Stein comes in. Will Stein decides that, pretty much they're going to go a different, separate way. All right? Cutter Boley is going to go out to Arizona State. He's going to go play for Kenny Dillingham. Arizona State, they took a little bit of a step back last season. Sam Leavitt obviously wasn't healthy. Jordan Tyson battled some stuff. It wasn't the 2024 Arizona State that you saw with Sam Leavitt that was healthy and Cam Speak-Adaboo running over people's faces. I think this Arizona State team this year is probably going to be pretty similar to what you saw last season. I really like Amarian Miller at the wide receiver room that they brought in from Colorado. And I think Cutter Boley has potential. I mean, you saw when we played them, Boley played good. I think Cutter Boley's a gamer. I also think Mikey Keene's a really good player. He was really good at Fresno State a couple years ago in the Mountain West. He went to Michigan. He was the backup last season behind Bryce Underwood. Obviously, when you have a five-star like Bryce Underwood, you're going to do everything you can to keep him on the field. Mikey Keene was never winning that battle over Bryce Underwood or taking over the starting job unless Bryce Underwood got hurt. At the end of the day, this one comes down to money again. I think Mikey Keene is pretty much, you're looking at, he's essentially your backup. He was a really good backup at Michigan. Obviously, didn't really play much. He was a really good player when he had his time in the G5 at Fresno State, and he started his career at UCF. But I just think when you look at this, they went out and they made a move. Kentucky decided that they were going to make a move. They were going to get Kenny Minchie from Notre Dame, who barely lost a quarterback battle last season to C.J. Carr. Cutter Boley says, okay, I'm going to go out to Arizona State. I don't think Cutter Boley goes out to Arizona State to play for Kenny Dillingham unless he knows he's winning this job, unless he knows he's getting this job. And personally, to me, I don't think they would have gone out and spent the money to get an SEC quarterback that has high-level potential like that unless they knew that he was going to be the starter. And not to mention, Cutter Boley is a Lexington kid. So I would be surprised if a Lexington kid left Lexington to go to a school to be QB2. Give me Cutter Boley for the quarterback one job for the Sun Devils.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think this is one of those QB battles, like I mentioned earlier, that might be a little bit engineered to kind of maybe just get a little bit more out of somebody. I don't think there's really much here as far as Cutter Boley not ending up being the starter. I think Tennessee fans, when they think of Cutter Boley, they just think of when we played Kentucky and kind of stomped them last year. But, I mean, he had 330 passing yards in that game, 5 touchdowns. He did throw a pick, but, I mean, he had a pretty good stat line against us. Say what you want about our defense last year, but I think Cutter Boley's a good quarterback. I mean, I think if anybody coming over out of the SEC, especially if you're going to make a jump that drastic, that far across the country, I don't think you're jumping in the portal going there not expecting to be the starter. So I think Boley's going to end up being the starting quarterback for the Sun Devils.
Yeah, he's just got to cut down his interceptions. I mean, that's the main thing for him. He had 15 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. I mean, his QBR for throwing that many interceptions wasn't terrible, but like as you said, he had some really good games last season. He played great against us. He had 5 touchdowns. He played good against kind of good against Vanderbilt. Kind of battled interception problems there, but threw for 280.
His best game was against us.
His best game was definitely against us. And again, secondary last season was not, exactly something that was, I mean, you had good corner play, but the safety play was bad. The linebacker play was hit or miss. I mean, that was a game that I was at that game, and I mean, there was basically a touchdown scored every drive between the two teams. There was 90 points scored. It was 56-34. So as much as he did throw for 5 touchdowns in that game, I mean, Tennessee was up by so many points. I think it was just partially to an extent, I think the defense wasn't getting rest in that game because, I mean, the offense was just going out and scoring, and the next thing you knew, the defense was right back on the field. So Cutter Boley, though, I think he has potential, and I think he could elevate the Arizona State team higher than what Sam Leavitt, injured Sam Leavitt was. Obviously, a healthy Sam Leavitt's better than Cutter Boley, but Cutter Boley can get Arizona State, I think, back to at least a higher floor than they were last season. Yeah. And then lastly, you have Clemson, Christopher Vanzini versus Tate Reynolds. I think this one's pretty obviously going to be Chris Vanzini. He had some really good games last season. Obviously, they're going to have a pretty good wide receiver room this season. They return a couple of their guys back that were really good in 2024. And I'm honestly – a lot of people are, down on Clemson. They don't like what Dabo's done over the past couple seasons. He started to use the transfer portal a little bit more over the past couple of years. I think they have a pretty good wide receiver room. TJ Moore, Bryant Wesco Jr., they battled so many injuries in that wide receiver room last year. I think Gideon Davidson at running back will take a little bit of a step up this season. But Vanzini, he had some good games last season, and I'm going to look up his stats here real quick because I want to say it was the SMU game, maybe. He threw for like 300 yards. He had one game where he was really, really good last season. 406 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception last year, and it was, SMU. Went 29 for 42 for 317 and 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. So I think this is a guy that can elevate the Clemson floor and ceiling again. I don't think Clemson's beating LSU, in Baton Rouge at Death Valley week 1 in a night game, but I don't think Clemson is going to be what they were last season. I think Clemson will be – I don't know that they're necessarily a ACC contender, but I don't think they're going to be playing in the Pinstripe Bowl next season.
Yeah. No, I'm kind of with you. I don't really know much of anything about Clemson's QB battle. I've not really kept up with Clemson a lot. Clemson's a team that could go 11-1 or 6-6, and neither one would really surprise me this season. That's just how Clemson has been the last couple years. A couple QB battles that I've been in tune to, though, that are number one is Vanderbilt. We've already talked about that.
Yeah.
I think Jared Curtis is in a really odd position to lose his spot to Blaze. I think it's Berlowitz. I don't even know how to. And I just call him Blaze.
Blades, yeah.
But
he doesn't really have much. I think a lot of people, everyone's like, well, he's the New Mexico State transfer, and everyone's thinking, he threw no, the guy has 190 career passing yards. He's never really played much in his career. And he wasn't. I mean, he's been at Vanderbilt for a while now.
Yeah.
I think he came over. I'm not 100% sure with this, but I'm pretty sure he came over from New Mexico State when Pavia came over with Jerry Kill. I'm pretty sure he came over after the 23 season. He's been there for a minute.
Yeah, and then the other, this is probably the weirdest one to me, and I didn't even know this was happening until probably a couple weeks ago, was UNLV's quarterback battle. Have you read anything
Orgy between Arnold? I think
Arnold.
I think Jackson Arnold's probably going to win it.
Yeah,
because I think he can resurrect his career with Dan Mullen. But I follow some accounts on Twitter because I'm really into G5 football and stuff. He's not had a good fall camp.
Oh no, he's not. That's why this has turned into a battle, because when he entered the portal to go to UNLV, that he was the presumed number one day one starting quarterback, and there was really no questions about it. But Alex Orgy has this. Again, this QB battle is not anything towards what Alex Orgy has done. Alex Orgy is not a great quarterback in his own right, but Jackson Arnold just can't seem to get anything going anywhere that he goes. And it's really unfortunate when you saw him coming into Auburn, it was like, oh, he's the next great SEC quarterback. You saw people making comparisons to guys like Cam Newton, which I thought was just absolutely insane when he was going into Auburn. But you see him transfer a couple different places. He ultimately winds up in UNLV. It's going to be really interesting to see if he can finally maybe get some stuff going, get into gear football wise. But it'll be interesting to see. I think he's going to end up being the guy because you paid him. Yeah, you pay him the money. Obviously, he didn't get the kind of money that he would have gotten the other places he transferred to, but you pay him regardless, and I think he's ultimately going to be the guy. But it's funny to see a quarterback battle between Alex Orgy and Jackson Arnold.
I agree. All right, well, we'll wrap it up on the other side. Final thoughts coming up next. Overtime here on Fan Run Radio.
Congratulations. You found sports radio that doesn't suck. This is Fan Run Radio, Knoxville.
Barley's has live music on weekends, general team trivia on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m., and now live sports trivia, courtesy of the Knoxville Trivia Guys, every Thursday night upstairs. The game starts at 7 p.m. and is free to play for everyone, so head on down to the Old City and show off your sports knowledge and win gift cards to Barley's. Use those gift cards to buy some delicious food and drinks, and you can take it all in with their wide selection of TVs and indoor projectors. Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria.
Golf Envy Farragut is the premier indoor golf experience you've been looking for. And right now they are offering a limited number of founding memberships. Golfers can reserve their spot for just $150 before their September grand opening. Founding members receive 90 days of unlimited guest passes, as well as an exclusive risk-free first month. That's right. Try out Golf Envy with no obligation. Give it 30 days, and if it's not the right fit for what you're looking for, your first month's dues will be refunded. Members will get access to their Golf Zone 2 Vision NX simulator technology, the most realistic simulator on the market, where they can play more than 300 courses and compete in leagues and tournaments with players all across the country. Golf, rain or shine, 24/7, 365. To learn more and become a founding member, visit their website at farragut.golfenvy.com/presale.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jacob Wilco at Knoxville Smiles. Have you ever wanted to improve the look of your smile? We know firsthand what the power of a great smile means to a person's confidence and health. Our team of doctors can provide you with an array of options for helping you achieve your cosmetic goals. From simply moving teeth into a better position, to reversible cosmetic bonding, to full mouth implant-supported dentures. It is our goal to help patients feel good about their appearance while achieving optimal health. Want to learn more? Call us at 865-539-1776 to schedule an evaluation, or visit us online at knoxvillesmiles.com.
All right, back here on Overtime, wrapping it up here on this Tuesday evening. We appreciate you sticking it out with us here for all 2 hours here on Overtime and your continued support. Final thoughts. Not much really to talk about. Not a whole lot on the TV at night, sports-wise. Just kind of getting ready for this first college football week. 18 days away from week 0 from UNC and TCU. Running out of the tunnel in Northern Ireland, or I guess it is just regular Ireland, in Dublin, Ireland. But it's going to be, it'll be a great game in retrospect as it's the first game of the season. But I think TCU is probably going to beat them by double digits. And I said something about that earlier on my Twitter, if you follow me on there. But
TCU's a good team.
I'm pretty interested in what that Jaden Craig kid does, their quarterback. He transfers over from Harvard, an Ivy League FCS school. He was going to be a 6th or 7th round pick if he would have gone to the NFL this past season, decided to transfer to Sonny Dykes and be the quarterback at TCU. I just think North Carolina is they're a dumpster fire right now. They have so many off-field issues. They don't have hardly any NFL talent on their team. I just think UNC is going to be a very similar team to what they were last year, and I don't think UNC is going to make a bowl game this season. I think TCU I think the line right now is 7.5. I think TCU. I think they have it at 7.5 because you're going to get weather in that game. Most likely it's going to rain. And you saw that in the Kansas State-Iowa State game last season where it rained and there was weather involved. But I just don't think that it's going to be that interesting as a competitive game. I think UNC is going to lose that one. Some other interesting games that day, North Dakota State and Jacksonville State. That's going to be a really good game. That's a big game for the G5. I don't necessarily know that neither of those teams are playoff contenders. I mean, if Jacksonville State went undefeated and won the Conference USA, of course, and if North Dakota State won 11-1 and 12-0 in the Mountain West, possibly. But I think that's going to be an interesting game as well. But yeah, it'll be interesting. Looks like Caleb, do we have someone on the line here to end it? Yeah, we'll get to him real quick. Hello.
Hey guys, what's going on? It's T-Clark.
Good. How you doing?
Hey guys, great. I was watching Josh Pate on 3 and brought up a really great question. And would you trade what you know now, 2 years of Tennessee being kind of meh at quarterback? I'm not saying meh, but like not having the best quarterback play, kind of quarterback. You don't know who's going to be the starter this year. Would you trade that now for Nico and what you had in Nico, knowing what you know now?
Sure. The way I look at it is I think the reason why people are higher on Nico this season at UCLA is because he's developed a little bit more of a vertical passing game. And obviously, if you were listening to us in the show earlier, that was something that we said. You know, he obviously didn't land the deep ball at the rate that Hendon did. He didn't land the deep ball at the rate that Joey did. He was probably even lower than Milton, who obviously didn't. I mean, he had the ability to land the deep ball with his arm, but lots of overthrows. Nico, you know, he played hard in the playoff game. I'll give that to him against Ohio State. I think he probably played harder than anybody else on the field that night. You saw him crack his helmet trying to get extra yardage. And obviously the way that the situation went down for Nico, I look at it as a perspective of, I'm not one of the people that hates Nico. I think he had an unfortunate situation where his parents were in his ear. And, you know, I think his parents really got involved in his decision-making, which I think was unfortunate. And in the NIL era, you've seen that. You've seen it with Legend Bay. You've seen it with Boo Carter. You've seen it with a lot of different situations. Obviously, the Nico situation is a little bit different to some of those. The way that I look at it right now is if Nico would have been here going into his 3rd season of quarterback this year, I think he would have given you a little bit of a higher ceiling probably going into this season. And you'd have a really good roster, I think, outside of quarterback. The way that I look at it is the 2027 team, you're going to have a lot of blue chip talent on that team. You're going to have a Gabriel Osenda. You're going to have a David Sanders. You're going to have Ty Redmond, TK Keys. You're going to have a ton of 4- and 5-star talent all over the place. And if Faison or McIntyre, whoever starts this season, them going into their 2nd year into 2027 with a little bit easier schedule, I think 2027 is your best shot to make the college football playoff. And in my opinion, if you have a quarterback that's already played a year, especially with a higher ceiling, I just think that that's better for what you have in 2027. And I think 2027 will be the most important year for Josh Heupel because if this team goes 8-4 this season and goes 8-4 next year, you're going to have some discussions. But if he goes 8-4 this year as a true freshman or a redshirt freshman quarterback and then goes 10-2 and makes the playoff next year, he's completely fine. So I think at the end of the day, we've talked about that on the show too, it might have almost been a blessing that Joey Aguilar didn't get an extra season, because I think that would have screwed the development of Faison. And then going into 2027 with a really good roster, you would kind of be in the quarterback situation that you're in right now going into even more of an important season next year.
That makes sense. Absolutely. I just feel like the 2026 season, this season, could have been that if you would have paid Nico. And I'm one of those that, like, hey, don't pay him, get him out of here, all that. But at the end of the day, you start looking, NIL prices are rising, through the roof. Nico seems to be just the guy who basically admitted what was going on first. It's like, hey, it's about money. You're not going to pay me. I'm going to go to someplace that will. So just thoughts, looking at it, what is it? Hindsight is 20/20, not looking at it from an emotional standpoint, just trying to look at it from a business standpoint. Y'all be good.
Sure. Thank you so much for calling in. We really appreciate it. All right. Well, great call there to end it. And that'll do it for our Tuesday show here. We appreciate everyone that called in, everyone that listened, everyone that was active in the chat box for another great day on Overtime. Myself, Garrett Armbrust, Caleb Boss. We'll be back again tomorrow, 6 to 8 p.m., breaking it all down again tomorrow. We're out.